So, according to StreamYard, we are now live.
Yeah, cool.
The chat. Hi, Mark. Hi, Mike.
Hi, boys. You all right?
Hello there. Is there anyone watching?
We'll give him a second to. We'll probably just do just a little general chat. Obviously, waiting for Scott to join still, and then we can get going. But obviously, we've got to cater for the people that'll watch this later and carry on regardless.
Absolutely.
Where is he?
I'm sure Scott won't be far off.
He's got the letter A though.
Oh, yes. Cheers, everybody.
Here he comes. Right, Scott. How you doing?
How we doing? Go for it.
We have gone for it.
You're alive now, son.
Can you hear us now, Scott? Are you all right?
No, I'm just acting up that my Wi-Fi's broken. Bye.
Bell end.
So we've got a couple of people.
Nathan. Hello there.
Nathan.
Peter, whoever that is, not sure. Death Wish icon.
That's the thing as well. It's evening for a lot of people, morning for a lot of people. You know, it's all over the world, isn't it? So, yeah, hello to everybody who's watching.
Right. Are you going to do your explanations, Cloudy?
Yeah. Well, so where's Scott gone? Hey, Bev. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Bev.
So, what we've got for your viewing pleasure tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Marc G with a C, the Rock Scout, and Metal Mickey, and I guess very loosely, we're going to go our A to Z of metal. So we're each going to take a band.
Not if A to Z, I'll tell them.
Say what?
Not the definitive A to Z. It's just
an A to Z. Any A to Z. So we've got a letter of the alphabet. We're going to pick a band from that letter and an album from that band, and just have a little bit of a chinwag about it. Say whether we like it, what we don't like about it, or even be something new that we've never seen before. So we'll just see how it goes. We may get through A to Z in this video. We may only get as far as C or D, but we'll see where the conversation takes us. But hope you guys enjoy it. It's the first time that we're all doing this kind of live stream together, so bear with us. Shall we dive into it, guys?
Yeah,
let's go on.
Okay, so Scott, you had the letter A. What have you chosen for us?
Well, I thought I'd make the first one a little easier for you. I'm going to go with Accept and Metal Heart. I actually chose this because it was kind of my gateway into Accept, because I really struggled with Udo's vocals for a few years before I really Accept. And then all of a sudden, I really just did click with this album, and then it kind of just opened up every other album to me. So at the same time, Wolf Hoffman, I think, is an absolute awesome guitarist. Him and Udo make a really good partnership. It's actually a shame that Udo's not in the band anymore, but they did get Mark Tenilo on to kind of take over, which it's good. It's because he sounds really like Udo. But yeah, this was kind of my gateway into Accept. Really, it's just like a staple 80s heavy metal classic. So that is going to be my choice. Accept and Metal Heart from 1985.
I think Accept are a band I haven't really taken the time as much as AC/DC, and I say AC/DC because to me they're sort of like a German version of AC/DC meets Judas Priest, and I do have that Metal Heart album because it's got a fantastic song on it called "Turn Me On." I absolutely love that song. I love that album. I only have that one and "Balls to the Wall." I've heard the newer stuff with the new guy, but they're definitely a band that I need to dig into more. But I'm just a bit pissed off because I've got the remastered versions and my OCD won't allow me to buy Restless and Wild because it isn't remastered. So I'm going to sell the remasters and start again with them. But yeah, I like that album as well. I just don't know the band's catalogue that well.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's probably the best of the lot, Restless and Wild. So you need to get past it, man, because that's awesome.
I was really late to the Accept party. I've said it before in my videos, like the journey I was on, I was on another level for heaviness. But since kind of joining this VC and especially seeing Darcy actually talk about them, I had to get involved. I think I've picked up maybe 3 or 4 of their albums, and I have to say, vocally, I'd never sort of really thought about his vocals, but there's definite Bobby Blitz Ellsworth out of Overkill thing going on there, you know. So I was attracted to that straight away. I thought, okay, I've said this before in videos. I was always, if a band didn't look, I didn't really pay him that much attention, as shallow as that sounds. But, you know, Udo just didn't look cool enough for me to pay that much attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, Balls to the Wall was my intro to them. I thought that album was awesome. Metal Heart, though, I still don't know if it's entirely clicked with me. I know there's lots of people who say it's their best one, but I've got it, and I probably should give it a little bit more of a listen. But I'm certainly more in the Restless and Wild and Balls to the Wall corner, and I've not heard any of the stuff after Udo, I have to say.
Yeah, I think is it Blind Rage or Blind Fury? I forget now. What is it called?
Blind Rage.
Yeah, that's a decent album. That's a good one. You know, I was quite impressed with that. Whether or not it's got the staying power of their early ones, I'm not quite sure. But and I can't remember what the singer's name is, but it's decent. It's really good.
I was going to ask if anyone knew what the new, or probably not a new singer anymore, but who is the singer of Accept? Is it somebody that was well known before?
They call him.
Was that Marc? Sorry?
He is awesome, the singer. But they've got a huge catalogue and it's hard to digest when you're totally new to them.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if Scott was just really still listening intently to what we were saying, but obviously I think his internet's froze. He's not having a good time with that Wi-Fi at the moment, is he?
No. Hey, Darcy. So so Scott's probably going to drop in either that or he's drinking particularly fast and has to keep popping to the fridge and back. But as soon as he comes back online, I'll get him back into the room.
Are we moving on to B?
A for Anthrax. Yeah. We may. If this goes well and people enjoy it, we may do this A to Z of metal and keep it going and pick some different bands. So I'm sure at some point, especially with Andy and Mike being involved, Anthrax has got to be in there.
You could probably guess, Mark, which album I'd show as well, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah.
We may save that for another day.
Yeah,
that's there first. Can I just say to people that are watching, thanks for all the comments that you're putting in. We're using a streaming application called StreamYard because Mike and Mark and Scott are all accessing this on the phones. They can't actually see the comments that you're putting in, but I can because I'm using it on a desktop. So I will try and keep my eye on those as well as the conversation and
everyone that's watching
and pop up. But I'll certainly give some people some shout outs that are watching as we go along. But if I don't get to your comment, it's probably just because I'm missing it, because there's quite a few popping up at the moment. But thanks all for watching, and yeah, let's move on to B now.
Right.
Is that you?
I've picked. This is the only album I have by these guys, and I don't listen to it very often. And when I put it on to refresh myself for this, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's Make Me Big, Andy.
Make you big.
Black Label Society.
There we go. What about you meant for a second, there, mate?
The Blessed Hell Ride. So, I mean, it's got some awesome songs. And for a guy like Zakk Wylde, who is obviously a fantastic player and he's capable of, you know, being all over the fretboard and stuff. He keeps the riffs, the basic music. He keeps really sort of meat and two veg. You know, it's really basic, and I say that in a good way. He doesn't overdo it. When it comes to the solos, you know there's a virtuoso playing the guitar. But I don't know. I've only got this album, and that's because when I had a spare year where there wasn't a great deal happening for me, and I teamed back up with some of my friends, they were playing this. But this band has put so many albums out. They're like Overkill and Motorhead. If you blink, they've had 3 albums out, and I wasn't sufficiently interested to keep up with the career, but I knew I liked this from 2003. I mean, the riff for the song "Suffering Overdue." The first 6 or 7 songs are flawless, just standard sort of. Ozzy Osbourne appears on this as well, doing backing vocals, and he has a bit of an Ozzy sound to his vocals as well, just as standard, probably intentional, and it's awesome. But what do you lot think? Black Label.
Well, Mark, I don't know. I don't know at all. I've got to say, I have nothing by Black Label Society, and I can't tell you why. They're not a band that I have purposely avoided. I just haven't. I just haven't got that on that crazy train yet.
Yeah,
Right, you, Mark?
I've picked a couple of their CDs up, and yeah, as Mike said, guitar playing, you can't fault it at all. From what I've heard of them, though, and again, they've got quite an extensive catalogue of albums. When you look, you kind of don't realise how many albums they've got. And from what I've heard, they sort of differ. The covers and all that, they kind of look like they're going to be that biker metal, you know.
Yeah.
But I think some of their albums are acoustic. I think they've recorded quite a diverse sort of style, from what I believe. It's not a band that I've delved really deeply into, but what I have heard of them, I've always enjoyed it. And it's kind of like one of those bands that there's a lot of band out there and you think, I like them, but they maybe just don't quite click for some reason. And I don't know if that's maybe because I've heard the wrong album first, if you know what I mean. I think sometimes they're good, and I would enjoy them. And if someone sent me a CD or I saw one cheap, I would certainly pick it up. But I always fear sometimes when a band has got such an amazing sort of guitarist, if you will, that everything's going to be sort of focused around them. And I'm not one for picking out single sort of artists in bands. It's a whole thing for me. I want the whole thing to be, you know.
What period of Ozzy was Zakk Wylde in? I mean, I was kind of late to the party with the whole Ozzy thing. I could never get on with his voice in the early 80s. That's my guilty.
Rest for the Wicked, or whatever it was. No Rest for the Wicked, I think. 1988 album.
Do you know what? I should probably know that because that was the first Ozzy album I bought. But it didn't click with me until, honestly, decades later. I love that album now. I can tell you who played on it.
Yeah, No More Tears was the first time I think I sort of paid attention to his guitar because of that riff in it, you know. Yeah, it was a real almost thrash sounding riff, you know, dun 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 dun. And yeah, so that he was brought to my attention. That again, I don't know how long he'd been in the band up to that point, but he's been in Ozzy's band for decades, hasn't he now?
He's not in them now, though.
Is he not now?
No.
Does he not do live? Does he not play live with the band or anything now?
He's not on that new album.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who he is, but he's not.
There he is.
There we go.
So
Yeah, No Rest for the Wicked, a great album.
Is No More Tears? Is that the Ozzy album that everybody's after a reissue because it's worth a fortune?
Yeah. Early 90s.
Why is that? Why is that? Because I'm sure, like the vinyl that Andy just showed then, from what I've seen, you can pick that up fairly easy. Was it on a different label? Or
Different album is shown there.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like that album, you seem to be able to pick that up for a decent price. Why is No More Tears so expensive?
I don't know, to be honest.
Oh, I bought that No Rest for the Wicked back in the 80s. So okay. When it came out, because I was kind of thought, well, I better get into Ozzy, you know. And it didn't click.
If anyone knows the answer out there, why No More Tears? Was it a different label? Is it a short press or what? I've got no idea.
I think they're all on Epic Records.
Yeah.
I think it's just because in the early 90s, everything was just all CD, and there just wasn't the amount pressed. I just think it was low presses in the 90s.
It makes sense because it probably was. The vinyl wasn't in at all, was it?
It wasn't prominent at all then, was it?
Yeah.
It was on. What's next? C.
I'm C.
Mark. Oh, yeah, I know you are. Marc C.
Exactly. Yeah.
With a G.
Or as
What a
Steve would
strategy!
like to,
What a flawless, seamless strategy we've got here.
Yeah, Marc G with a C. If Steve's watching, it's Marc G with a C.
Where is Scott? Just before we carry on, where's Scott gone?
I don't know. I've just sent him a message, but he seems to have disappeared.
Because we've gone from the Four Horsemen to the Three Stooges.
Yeah, and what I like about the picture is, you know, your cap's facing. I've got the peaks facing in towards me, so I'm, you know, the cap's each side of the bald head. Maybe
I look like we're staring at you.
That's no accident.
Yeah. Come on, Scott. Where are you?
All right, he's trying. Yeah, carry on regardless. He was
right. Come on, Mark.
It's I'm on C, and as you can well imagine, I was always going to show something from the heavier end of metal, without a doubt. And the one I've picked is
get you on
Carnage. There we go. Get that. Carnage and Dark Recollections. This album from 1990, I believe. Yeah. Now, the reason I wanted to show this one, and I'm sure hopefully a lot of people watching this will know about this band, but this is one of the most unknown bands, I suppose, coming from that Stockholm, Sweden death metal scene. Obviously, people know Dismember and Entombed. But basically, Carnage, I hope that glare's not too bad, was these three guys here. These went on to be in Dismember. This guy here, Johnny, ended up on the credits for Entombed. And the guy at the end, Michael Amott, he was more famously the guitarist for Carcass, and then later on Arch Enemy. So kind of a super group, I suppose, from back in the day. But if you like Entombed and you like Dismember, the you know, the grave, that HM2 buzzsaw guitar sound. This, in my opinion, is as good as anything Entombed and Dismember put out. It's kind of like a nice balance between the two. Entombed were a bit more melodious, and Dismember had the more aggression, and this is kind of a mix of the two. And like I say, Entombed and Dismember are the bands that always get mentioned, I suppose because they're part of the Swedish Big Four, as they call it. But this is an absolute cracker. And if any of you out there like Entombed, I promise you will like this. It's an absolute great album, one of my favourites. I know Mike's going to know a little bit about
chip
that.
in now. I'm going to chip in first. I've got it here as well. Did you all know that I collect Earache vinyl?
No.
No, I never knew that.
Have I mentioned that? No, I'll tell you what it is. This is on Earache now, but it wasn't back in the day, was it, Mark? It was on.
No, it was on
Kreator Records.
Correct. It was a little sub-label.
So when he mentioned it a few months ago, and he showed it when he bought it, and I was like, Earache, Carnage, I've never heard of that. And when I looked into it or watched his video, I can't remember which, and I realised it was on Necrosis, and that shit's really hard to come by. So I picked it up, and me and Mark are better friends than to fall out over my next 60 seconds opinion on that album. But I bought that purely because it's an Earache record now. Earache was a parent company of Necrosis, and I do like Entombed and Dismember, but I've played that 3 times now, and nothing at all jumps out at me. In fact, I either put it on side 1 and then put it back in the sleeve, or put it on side 2 and put it back in the sleeve. It never interests me in the least, and I think to myself, what is he getting out of this? What? Because you're the only guy I know that's into it, and I'll think, what is he doing? You know, and because we're all friends, when you know one of your friends likes something as much as they do, you give it another crack of the whip, and I'm thinking, what is he getting out of this? If that didn't say Mosh 76 or whatever it says on it, it would be on eBay now. I'm sorry, I can't get into it. That's me done. Someone else take over.
Do you know what, Mike? That's it's funny that you're saying that you just got it on eBay, because in my last video I showed a Michael Furlong album that I just bought because it was on Music for Nations, and it is horrible. It's terrible, absolutely awful. It's made me not want to buy another album just because it's on a label. But yeah, I don't know them. You're not going to be surprised to know I don't know them. But you did mention there, is it there's some members were in Carcass, Mark?
Yeah, the guitarist, the sort of main guitarist, I suppose, of Carnage. They only recorded the one album, and then they disbanded, and 3 went on to form Dismember. But Mike Mott, he got the Carcass gig, and then obviously Arch Enemy after that, which. And he also, when he joined Carcass, it was at that point where they were going from a brutal, as Scott would have me say, like a grindcore band. They were going on to then like a more melodic death metal sound. So I presume Michael and Mott's got a lot to do with that. But one thing I will say, talking about that, Mike, is I think sometimes, for me, I bought that album when it first came out. So 1990, I was 18 years old, maybe even 17 years old. And I'm sure a lot of you guys out there, you know as well, when you're at that age and you're really sort of looking at the direction you're going in and delving into these bands, it was probably one of those bands. I probably played it 5 times a night, you know, and I was listening to every little bit of it. I was learning bits of the guitar, and so I think sometimes when you hear an album, if you will, when you're 18 compared to, you know, 20 years later, they probably resonate with you.
Here that falls under that category. What you're trying to say, you've got to be there at the time, capture the magic. Otherwise,
absolutely,
you might not get it.
And I think that's what the album does for me. It was like I heard that a similar time to hearing Left Hand Path by Entombed and also Like an Ever Flowing Stream by Dismember. And for me, why that wasn't compared to those other two, I never understood, because it was like I say, the perfect balance between the two bands. So I loved it. You know, bands.
We move on to D now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let's hear what Scott's opinion is. Eh?
Oh, he's been up there. That's still. I thought he was. I thought it was. He was looking at Madden Tussauds' webcam. Stop fucking about.
Is he taking the piss now, or is he just?
I'm not. But anyway, Scott, it's nice to see you back, mate. I hope you're going to.
He's just been. He's been an arsehole there. Oh, no, he's not.
Oh dear.
I don't believe it.
He needs to pay his internet bills. Well, anyway, what I was going to say, Mark, about Carcass is I have a best of Carcass album, and that's the closest I've got to kind of delving in, because I almost got to see Carcass and Children of Bodom at a one-day festival that got kind of canned at the last minute. So I bought some Children of Bodom and Carcass and quite enjoyed them, I have to say. But wasn't going to dive any deeper into them.
I think if you were going to sort of go on any journey into death metal, and I know a few people who we chat with on the VCR, Carcass is probably not one of the bands you would start with. I
didn't mind it. I like some of it, but not enough to delve deeper.
And I think the reason being is because they're a bit like Napalm Death. They started off one style, which was complete and utter grindcore. And if you're not familiar with that, that's the music that your parents would say is just a noise, you know. And as they got later on, they were certainly more melodic and definitely more accessible. Is Scott struggling to hear us?
Right, let's move on to D then. or is he saying that's death metal? I don't know.
yeah.
But it's a great place for him to get stuck on anyway. So let's move on to D. So D was me. I've gone for some what is classic new wave of British heavy metal with Demon. I know, Mike, you know this one as well. This is Night of the Demon, but I didn't know this one. This was a this was a blind buy for me, and it's a shame Scott's not on because I bought it from one of his favorite record shops as well. And it was when I just started buying vinyl again and really kind of getting back and discovering a lot more metal that I missed off in the 80s. And I saw this in the metal section, and it was before I was really kind of savvy to looking at things like Discogs to find out a bit about bands. But because it was in the metal section and the cover looked like this, I thought this has got to be kind of something gnarly, something thrashy, whatever. I'd never heard of Demon. So I got it home and I put it on, and it's got an intro on there, and the intro is really atmospheric, and it's sort of demonic chants, and it's gnarly, and then it builds up and it gets into the title track Night of the Demon, and it just cuts into really kind of upbeat, happy new wave of British heavy metal, really rocking. And for me, this album it's a 10 out of 10. Every single track on here is fantastic. So Night of the Demon, the title track, as I say, there's even some sort of slow ones on here which I still love as well. But yeah, I mean, all the songs are of a kind of demonic nature. There's nothing particularly to look at in the middle. The song Kreator, but this was 1981, I think. So, but yeah, if you're into that early new wave of British heavy metal sound, Demon were great for me for the first two albums. They went a kind of a little bit more melodic, proggy from the sort of third album onwards. But there we go. It's Night of the Demon. That's my number D. My letter D.
Is Scott not here? I'll chip in on that then. Yeah, that album was an album I remember seeing as a teenager in my local record shop, which has long since gone. And I hadn't heard of it in, and if I had read about it in Metal Hammer, it didn't jump out at me as something, and I ignored it. And I always used to look for other things. And it, I mean, the name and everything and the cover, right? You would expect it to sound different, but I didn't know anything about it. And when you showed it, I thought it opened up all these. Oh yeah, I remember seeing that. You know, blah blah blah. And I only heard that album about 6 months ago after watching you chunking it on here, and I listened to it on YouTube, and I was absolutely blown away from start to finish. And then I immediately, before the album even finished, went on eBay looking for it and bought it. And then when it landed, we went out in the car, and I put it on in the car for Julie. And 2 or 3 songs in, and she is all like, you know, totally not heavy metal at all. And even she said, that is fantastic. That
Really?
album. That's an album that if we go somewhere long distance, that's one of the CDs I put in the car because we both love it. It's fantastic. But the name would suggest it would be heavier than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the names of the song titles, but it is it's just it's light and airy. It's kind of not heavy metal as you'd expect from the likes of Iron Maiden and what have you. It's still got that kind of a bit of hard rock, maybe a tinge of the 70s stuff to it, but it's just really upbeat, and you know, it's kind of really feel good album, even though all the songs are fairly demonic in nature, but not demonic certainly.
I'm sold on it. I need to buy it straight away. I'm not familiar with that at all. I am familiar with the band, but I'll be honest. You know, that cover and the name, it sounds heavy. It does, but right. I'm aware that it isn't. I'm very aware. I have got, in fact, Andy, it's your lucky day because I picked up this one fairly recently, and I've had a listen to it, and I know. Jokingly, you had said, "Well, if you don't like it, send it to me." But I'm not a big fan, so this will be heading your way at some point. I don't know if the album you were talking about is like this, or if this is the more proggy. But
yeah, that's not the same as the first couple of albums. Yeah, it's so the album that Peter mentioned here, The Plague, is the one that went kind of a little bit more. It just took a completely different direction. I mean, if you were a diehard Demon fan, I guess, back in the day, and you suddenly heard this, it would have been a bit of a shock to the system. I actually do like that album, The Plague, but it's very, very different from their first two.
Right, yeah. Well, I was gathering that from the way you were talking about it, but I'm fairly sort of aware of the band, and I knew that they'd started off a certain style, and as time had gone on, they'd gone a bit more proggy. But you know, like anything, when you're hearing people in the VC talking about music and albums, if you're hearing more than 1 or 2 or 3 people saying it really is a good album, then for me, I'm going to check it out. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to have a little butchers at that.
Very catchy, immediately catchy first listen.
Yeah. And as much as, you know, I'm into the brutal music, as you know, but I do quite like a little bit of the more gentler and instantly catchy, you know, whether it's AOR, whatever you want to call it, hard rock. But yeah, I don't mind a bit of
You're all over the shop, Mark.
I know I am, yeah.
You're much more diverse than I am, I've got to say.
Right, so E's next. What Scott picked?
Because he might come through by text only. Let's see. You going to check up a comment, Scott? You're still here in Spiritland.
I think Scott's ended up watching us 3 as well, hasn't he, bless him? Come back soon, Scott, will you?
Right. What do we? Cloud is the leader. Where do we go now?
Well, he's mentioned what his album is, and I'm going to. He sent it to me on a Facebook message. So where's that gone? But I don't know the album to talk about. So
There you go.
Easy or self-titled. I've never heard that. I don't know who that band is at all.
I don't either. I've heard of them, but I don't know who they are.
What a troublemaker!
I wouldn't know if they were American or German or I've got no idea. I've got no idea what the EZO stands for either.
No, I have no idea about that.
Oh, right. Yeah. So he's just, yeah. This is why it doesn't necessarily work. So it's it's EZO is the band. It's a self-titled album. It's not E by EZO.
E equals easy.
Yeah, I read it as EZO, but I'm still no wiser.
Actually, yeah, someone's just commented that it's Japanese. I am aware of them now, but and I've got quite a few Japanese metal bands in my collection, but these guys aren't one of them. So I reckon we move on. Sorry, Scott, it'd be great to have you in on this, but sort yourself out for next time, please, mate.
You've got to pay your bill when you consume the product. You must pay for it.
Right. Next time, mate, so you can feed the meter. That's what you want to do.
Big me up, Cloudy.
All right then, Mike, your turn.
Right. I meant screen wise. I mean, Mark is on the stage, and I'm like, I'm put. All right, here we go. Right, Freak of Nature.
Freak of Nature.
That is White Lions frontman Mike Tramp's band. This is from 1993. You can squash me back down now. I'm not always keen on being.
I want you in your face. I want you to explain yourself.
All right. Okay. Well, Mike, White Lion. I was never into White Lion. To be honest, I only heard the song "Wait" one time, and I just thought, well, if that's what they do, I don't want to know. So I ignored them, and then. In 1993, this band played the Dynamo Festival and Mindfunk. You may have heard me speak about them. Mindfunk played the Dynamo Festival, and I was watching Headbangers Ball, and they showed footage from the Dynamo. They showed Mindfunk and everything, and they also showed Freak of Nature. And I was equally took up with that Freak of Nature album as I was with Mindfunk. Absolutely fantastic. Obviously, it's Mike Tramp. It's not Cannibal Corpse. It's light rock. But I mean, it's just amazing from start to finish. No bad songs on there. 92, they call the song. It's about his grandmother dying. It's just a fantastic album from start to finish. And it's on Music for Nations, Andy. But it's probably out of your remit for what you want to buy. Music for Nations 146. But
46 away from
it's getting up there for the price nowadays. You'll pay double figures on CD and you'll pay 25, 30 quid on vinyl. But it's a fantastic light rock album. Again, instantly catchy. If you like White Lion, you're going to like Mike Tramp's harder rocking edge than he was in White Lion. I'm out of that. Over to you.
Me, again, not familiar with that band. White Lion, I've got a couple of their albums, but they never really did anything for me, I have to say.
Yeah, I have got a couple of Freak of Nature. Is that their first one or their second one?
Steve, I've no taste.
He knows you well, buddy. He knows you well.
What you say, Mark?
Is that their first album or their second one?
First, Gathering the Freaks is the second one.
Yeah, I do have those two on CD, and purely only because when I always sort of go back to this, the journey I was on, first getting into rock and metal. A friend of mine, he was a big fan of White Lion, and obviously Wait was their famous song. So I knew about them. I was quite quite interested in Mike Tramp's voice. I thought he had a decent voice. I forget the guitarist's name, but he always seemed quite a decent lead guitarist for White Lion. But I picked up purely because of the Mike Tramp connection. And coincidentally, I know Mike Tramp played a bit of a tour. I think it was either to the end of last year, like a solo tour. And he played at my friend's bar in Blackpool or Waterloo. And apparently he was a top fella, an absolute gentleman.
Yeah, I'd go and see him.
And he had tons of time for all the people who were there having the pictures took with him. And not like Jeff Tate, who charges 50 quid to have a selfie with him, you know. But yeah, I enjoy him. I like him. It's on the softer side, you know. I don't always listen to the softer side, but when I do, I do enjoy it. I think it's a decent album, that, yeah, for sure.
Right, what we on now? G.
Is it me?
Him
It's
again.
G.
Marc G.
Me again.
With a G.
It's funny that, isn't it? I've had C and G. Marc G with a C, Marc C with a G. So my choice, and again, this is where I get bigged up by Andy.
If he's on the board, he will.
I'm getting used to this back to front thing as well. Godflesh from 1989, again on Mike's beloved Earache Records. This is it was my first sort of introduction to what they call industrial metal. Justin Broadrick, who was initially the guitarist in Napalm Death, and he was I think he only played on one side of their debut album. Well, this is his band. It's a decent album. I like it. I wanted to show it because, like I say, it was my introduction to industrial metal, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if bands like Fear Factory were influenced by these. But listening to it nowadays, the drums do sound quite dated. Guitaring sounds great. Shouted, rough vocals. I always loved the cover, and in fact, I remember the picture on the back of Cause of Death by Obituary. The bass player Frank Watkins was wearing a T-shirt by this band, so it was always a little bit of a gateway into checking bands out for me. If I saw someone wearing the T-shirt and it was a band I liked, I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to check them out. But yeah, it's a decent listen. It's the first sort of 4 songs. It's solid, and it does drop off a little bit in the middle for me. And like I say, it does sound a bit dated now. But Justin Broadrick, like I say, he was a bit of an influence, you know, in the late 80s with Napalm Death and both Godflesh. But industrial metal, yeah, quite very dissonant chords. Not an album for the faint-hearted. If you were trying to get into this stuff, it's a tough listen, if you ask me. But certainly influential one. And this album got me listening to Pitch Shifter. After that, they were sort of the next sort of big industrial sort of metal band, and they went on to bigger and better things. But again, a band who were half the album. It's I don't know, maybe 6 out of 10. You know.
I wouldn't change a single word that you've said there, Mark. That's pretty much how I sum that album up. I think it was probably Mike Patton wearing a Godflesh T-shirt that made me take notice of them. But as you'll know, living in England and being into metal, and I've said this in one of my videos in the past, I don't know whether it got overseas as much as it did. If you were in England around that time and you were listening to metal, Earache was as big as Iron Maiden, and Godflesh come on my radar somehow. Probably Mike Patton wearing a T-shirt or something like that. But you're right. It starts off strong with Like Rats and stuff like that, but it gets the drums are tedious because it's a drum machine, and it's quite. I tend to find I play a computer game and have that playing in the background. It's a good soundtrack to playing like Doom or some shit. But as an out and out, or I'm going to listen to Godflesh, I kind of play the first couple of songs off it, and the third one, Pulp, I absolutely hate that song because it's just that is too monotonous. But yeah, it's a tough listen, but it's I don't dislike it. Like you say, it's about a 6 out of 10.
So
Yeah.
So why is it a drum machine? Because they not have any more minutes.
Just for that more mechanical, precise.
Right. So it was
and he's right. Mark's right. Fear Factory are in debt up to there because of Godflesh. I think the name appealed to me as a child as well. Godflesh.
Yeah,
it's an awesome name, isn't it?
It's kind of like the riffs in it. The riffs are written sort of almost with the drum machine in mind.
Yeah.
You know, diddle dun 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 diddle dun dun dun. It's kind of like that. It's completely industrial. It really is. But getting back to what Mike said about earache, it was that big earache again for me in the sort of late 80s, early 90s that whatever they were putting out, I was buying it. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
It was like the seal of approval. A bit like nowadays Nuclear Blast. Most of the stuff that Nuclear Blast put out, you're gonna have a little listen. You've got to check it out. But Earache was the extreme music was coming out on Earache. So Peaceville was a bit similar. I don't know if I know Mike's heard of Peaceville. I'm not sure if Andy's heard of Peaceville, but they were big labels sort of putting out the extreme music, and it was always you weren't quite sure what they were going to sound like, but you were going to buy it anyway. It was as simple as that.
Plug your phone in, Bev.
Come on, Bev, sort it out.
Plug your phone in the new.
Yeah. So my review will be quick and simple. I don't know them at all. I only know them because, and as soon as you showed it, I thought, I know that's on Earache because Mike has shown it recently. So let's move on to I, and Scott's one was I. He's given me a heads up that his I was Iron Maiden. Not surprising to see this band showing it first, and Peace of Mind. So I will give you my take on this one, Scott. I struggled with this album when it first came out, and which is really a bizarre thing to say because the songs on there like Revelations, Flight of Icarus, Die With Your Boots On, The Trooper, they're all on Live After Death, and that's where I heard them for the first time. And I love them on there, but when I heard them on here, they just sounded a little slow, a bit pedestrian, and it took me a while really to kind of click with this album as a whole. But it's got some of the best Iron Maiden songs on here without a doubt. But when I was familiar with the live versions first, and by Live After Death, this album was what 2 or 3 years old by then, so they've been used to playing those songs over and over again. And they, bands when they play songs live year after year, they change it up, embellish it a little, slightly different tempo. So that's why it took me a while to click on this. But I think one of the underrated classics on here is "To Tame the Land." It's the last song on the album. I think that's probably one of the better ones for me from hearing it from a studio perspective. So what about you guys? What are your thoughts on Peace of Mind?
I need a new drink and the toilet, so let me quickly go off first, and then I can shoot off. I'm not one to sort of cop out and you know me, I've always got my own opinion on things, even if it rubs people up the wrong way. But Andy has got it absolutely bang on. I was exactly the same. I heard Live After Death first. I went back and thought, I love these songs, but they sound really lackluster. And over time, I've gotten over it because I've deliberately not listen to Live After Death, even though it's awesome. I've deliberately, I mean, live albums they're just not high up there for me as far as my listening goes. I'm all about studio albums, but it's been beneficial, that attitude, in order for me to appreciate Peace of Mind over the years, because he's absolutely right. You thought you were checking like 33, 45 shit when you go back after Live After Death. But it's a phenomenal album, and I love Martin Birch's production. I wish they still used him, but I mean, no Iron Maiden album is anything less than excellent to me. So yeah, give us 2 minutes, though. You crack on with yours, Mark. Let me Call of Duty.
As pointed out, we missed H, and that was mine. So I'm kind of I'm paying attention, but also not paying attention at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's understandable, because we're half hoping Scott's going to pop back into the mix somewhere, aren't we? I think Mike said it really well there. It's Live After Death. It's almost like such a good album. I mean, my introduction to Iron Maiden was somewhere in time. So when I listen to Peace of Mind, I've always enjoyed it, but I think because you had like it was a bit more. I'm not sure if the word's commercial somewhere. You know, we've wasted years and Stranger in a Strange Land, but I think Peace of Mind seemed like more like an album to me. And because I've been listening to Live After Death a lot, and obviously all the songs, you know, are on there, I enjoy it. It's not one that I go to an awful lot, but whenever I do play it, I always enjoy it. Always, all the Iron Maiden albums, really. And I do need to listen to some of the. I've got Book of Souls. I've not even listened to it yet.
Good album. Should give it a go. It's a long album. In fact,
and I think that's why I've not listened to it yet, because I'm thinking I need a bit of time to listen to it. You know, so sometimes when I go to the music room, I'm looking for a 40-minute album, and well, you're never going to get that with Maiden, are you? I suppose.
I found I had the CD first, and it came on 2 CDs, and it was like I wasn't going to listen to one CD and then stick on the other one. It was just to say too long. But when I got it on vinyl, it's like a triple album, and I kind of found it easier to consume. I could listen to 2 songs, go get a drink, come back, flip it over, listen to another couple of songs. And I appreciated it a lot more when I heard it on vinyl. And sometimes when records are 3 discs, it annoys me, but it kind of worked with that one. And your camera has frozen on me, Mark. I don't know if it's on my end or yours. Yours looks all right though, Mike. So I hope we're not losing you as well, Mark. I can hear you. Okay.
I'll tell you what's happening. And I can hear, if you can hear me, the weather outside is absolutely booting it down with rain, and I can hear the thunder. So that might explain what, I don't know what it's like there, but it might explain what's happening with Scott. Maybe it's a weather thing. I'm not sure.
It's not raining here. I was wondering whether your missus had just gone onto Netflix. It's totally bad.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's go back to H, which was mine, which I forgot about. And as a few people in the comments had probably guessed, it's H. It's got to be Helloween. And I have gone for, and I've not chosen this. I'm not going to say this is my favorite Helloween album. I love it as a Helloween album. It is certainly one of my favorite, but it's probably got one of my favorite Helloween songs, which is Rise and Fall. But I also love I Want Out as well. But I'm sure I heard this part 2 before I heard part 1 in the 80s. I didn't own it in any physical form back then. It was one that I taped off somebody, or probably a tape of a tape of a tape, no doubt. But this was probably my introduction to Helloween. and I've kind of I'm a bit of a sucker for everything Kai Hansen since from Gamma Ray, Iron Savior, Unisonic, and the latest Helloween outing up there that I've got as well recently, which I've still not heard. But yeah, great album. Apparently, it was supposed to be a double album. I've got both, so it doesn't really bother me that it didn't come on as a double album, but it certainly makes sense that it probably would be. Probably the Keeper of the Seven Keys is a little bit too long for my liking at the end. But yeah, overall, fantastic, absolute classic German power metal album from the 80s. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, it's a classic, simple as that. Again, I always go back to this, the music I was listening to, and a good friend of mine, he pointed out to me to give this a listen. So I suppose it was my first real exploration to power metal, really. The vocals that I was listening to were getting gruffer and gruffer and deeper. So to hear Michael Kiske and his vocal delivery, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I want to stand out song for me for sure. I always enjoyed Dr. Stein. In fact, I'm going on holiday. I think I went. Where was I? I forget what even country I was in, but I bought a little 3-inch CD single, and I still got it to this day. Yeah, and again, like you said, Andy, I heard part 2 before I heard part 1. Part 2 led me into part 1, and I don't enjoy part 1 as much as part 2. And again, I don't know if that's because that was my introduction, but yeah, everything about it, musicianship-wise, Carson, my introduction to him, just a great album. Maybe not a 10 out of 10, but it's certainly, 8 or 9 out of 10 for me. Great artwork, brilliant. Yeah, great album.
Cool. Mike?
Well, I heard part 1 first because my friends at school went to Germany on a school trip and somebody brought part 1 back and we were all about it. So I was ready for part 2 coming out. And I mean, to me, no, it's not a 10 out of 10. It's an 11 out of 10. It's just, I don't think Keeper of the Seven Keys is too long or anything. The whole album is perfect, and so's part 1. They are the 2 albums, if my house is on fire, that I would save, because they remind me so much of old friends, and part 2 reminds me of my mother. I know that might sound strange, but it does. And they hold so many memories, and I've listened to them albums at least a dozen times a year for 30 plus years, and they don't even get close to being tiresome for me. 11 out of 10, both albums, but I especially like Keepers 2. One of them, the difference with Keepers 1 and Keepers 2, Keepers 1 was wrote primarily by what do they call the guy from Helloween who smokes all the time? The other guitarist. He's like his big smoker, isn't he?
I never remember the other guys other than
he's Welkeith or something like that.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
He wrote Keepers 1, and Kai Hansen wrote Keepers 2. That primarily, so it's kind of Welkeith or whatever versus Hansen. And like Andy, Kai Hansen for me he's one of my heroes of metal. So Keepers 2 is just right up there for me.
So I wonder who wrote Pink Bubbles Go 8 then?
Fucking Julian Lennon.
I know Frankie just mentioned about Andy Dennis there, and I kind of left Helloween alone at that Pink Bubbles Go 8 part, and I've only just got back into listening to Helloween again. Just people in the VC talking about them, and Andy Derrish, yeah, he's certainly a very competent vocalist. There's no doubt about it. But again, I think with my introductions, Helloween being Michael Kiske, that's kind of who I do like. But yeah, he's Andy Derrish.
Andy Derrish is good.
Andy Derrish is pretty good. Kind of, I enjoy everything that I've heard of theirs, to be honest.
So is Andy Derrish the singer on that CD? I think I got off you, Mike. The one with the rabbits one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all right.
Easy.
That was the first, like, post-90s or post-80s Helloween album that I heard, and that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I wonder why they went
very
through.
good. There's some songs on there, obviously from the Andy Derrish era. I know you've bought that new Helloween live, and that'll give you a good taster of some good Andy Derrish stuff. And obviously he's performing on there as well. Fantastic. Helloween can't do any wrong for me. And not Pink Bubbles is like it's almost the same quality as, like, you know, when people release B-sides and unreleased demos and all that. Pink Bubbles is like a B-sides album. I don't mind it, but it's no keepers.
No, I'm doing it disservice saying that, really, because it's an alright album, but I think compared to the one previous to that, you know, it's I suppose it's got a lot to live up to, hasn't it? You know, and almost inevitably, I suppose bands can't keep putting out albums like that, can they? They've got to have a little moment where I'm not quite sure where they're going, or the members in the band are getting a little bit bored. I don't know what it just seemed to lack what the first two albums had, you know, and even like Walls of Jericho and that, it just seemed a bit just lost for ideas, you know.
Yeah.
But like I say, not the worst album in the world, that's for sure.
Right. Well, I'll bring up my gin.
Mike, just before you go on, I just want to let people know. So there's a comment about whether we're following the comments. So I mentioned this at the start, but obviously not everybody was on at the start. So the StreamYard app that we are using to do this live stream, I get to see the comments coming in, but because Mark and Mike and Scott, when he was on, are doing this over their mobile phones, they don't get to see the comments. So if I'm trying to keep up with them and also keep up with the chat, so apologies if I'm missing anything in particular, but it's on me rather than the guys. But if there's any interesting questions that are coming up, I'm going to try and get them up on the screen. So we'll see them if we can. But apologies if I miss any. Right, go for it, Mike.
Thanks to anyone who's watching and commenting. Yeah, and if we do see them pop up along the bottom here, I promise you, we can see them, but I suppose as the conversation's flowing, you know, you don't want to lose your train of thought sometimes. We're not going there, guys. Please don't think that.
Jay?
So it would have been easy for me to go with Judas Priest, and it would have probably been sensible for me to go with Judas Priest, but I haven't, because I just wanted to try and, you know, I don't know if Judas Priest doesn't get enough talking about, you know, I think they maybe do. So I've gone with an album that I don't particularly like, but Andy, come on, get your trigger finger going, big me up.
Right.
That's me. You bloody loser. It's Jane's Addiction, Ritual de la Habitual from 1990. Famous for the video Bean Coat Stealing. Right, 3. Let's go with the 3 now. So this album, for me, right, 1990 was still very much. I better hold it up for any new viewers. 1990 was still a continuation of the 80s until this came out. It was only when this came out, the 1990 stopped feeling like 1989 Part 2. And this guy, this is like alternative rock. There's a lot of guitar virtuoso on here with Dave Navarro. He's obviously not a Steve Vai or anything like that, but he's obviously massively competent. But for me, when I got into this album, it was because I'd never heard somebody sing lyrics so direct. And I mean, there's like a song on Being Caught Stealing. He sings, I've been caught stealing once when I was 5. I enjoy stealing. It's just as simple as that. And I listened to that song and thought, that's so obvious. Normally singers have like a poetic way about themselves. There's another one where he sings, I think it's on the third song, Ain't No Right. He says, I am skin and bone, I am pointy nosed, but it motherfucking makes me try. And obviously that was Perry Farrell's appearance. And I'd never heard sort of lyrics sang in that sort of juvenile, there's sort of a juvenile genius about this album for the first half. And then I didn't realize back in the day, but later on I learned to realize that the last few songs was all about his mother died, and Dave Navarro's mother got murdered when he was only a kid, and then his sister died or something like that. And they both really experienced harrowing situations in the young lives at the time, and they made 3 or 4 really downbeat sort of monotonous songs at the very end of this album, which tails off. But the first 5 or 6 are rocking great songs. But what do you lot think?
Well, this is like 90s is not my best year for or decade for metal, really.
3 people on the community.
Maybe you should be directing this, Mike. You see there. On the ball that I am.
It's obvious to everyone that I'm going to be the brains of the outfit.
You notice it's got slightly less coordinated the more beers I've had, but needs must. So I'm not that familiar with Jane's Addiction. I know who they are, I know what they sound like, but never a band that really floated my boat. Metal was changing too much for me at the time, and my musical direction was perhaps heading a different way. So I'll leave Mark with the final comments on this one.
Yeah, a funny album for me. It was Being Caught Stealing was everywhere. Someone made a comment there about it was being played every Friday night in their local pub. And it's the same. It's one of those songs that I'm not sick of hearing it, but I won't be upset if I never heard it again, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of came along, and as we would call ourselves back in the day, the weekend rockers, it seemed to appeal to a lot of people who were maybe listening to indie music, and it kind of bridged that gap between sort of indie and metal. I think Mark said it, like indie rock. And all of a sudden, just seems to be a lot of people in our local pub with dreadlocks and caftans. And instantly, because of that, I kind of probably I've got that album. I used to have the first one as well, the Siamese ladies on the front, I think it was. It's not an album I listen to nowadays, and it sounds dated. It feels dated to me now, and I think maybe it's more of a personal kind of thing, but
very much of the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it was, like I say, it just seemed to be listened to by the wrong people, if you will, and you know, people spoke about it, talked about it, and you just thought, these people have got no idea. So I tarred them with that brush, you know, the sort of the weekend rocker kind of thing, and like I say, it was all a bit about the image and you know, Dave Navarro, like you say, he's a good guitar player, but the tattoos and the slick look, and is it Perry Farrell was a singer? What's he called?
There was sort of like, they deliberately lacked any sort of. I mean, I hate macho things. I'm not a macho guy, and I don't like anything macho. But they went too far the other way. There was sort of. They wanted to. They were virtually trying to behave like women and sort of say. I got the feeling it was like, all right, how much of this effeminate stuff can you rockers take before you'll just knock us off? It kind of felt like that a bit. And I used to use that band to get women.
No, you don't have to answer that one.
But yeah, it's James Addiction. I don't know. It's I'm not a big lover. Certainly not a big lover. And I know it's Christian there mentioned about Navarro. He joined Red Hot Chili Peppers for one album. And as it happens for me, it's their worst album. It didn't quite work, that one. You know, it was too much, a bit too much for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think it was One Hot Minute, the album he played on. Yeah, it wasn't a match made in heaven, that one.
Should we drop that quickly and get on to
I was just wondering, Mark, your video is pretty much frozen at the moment. Your audio is okay. I don't know whether you want to risk jumping out and coming back in again, see if it improves.
How long has it been frozen for?
A while.
A while, yeah.
Okay, I'll give it a go. See you soon, guys.
Okay.
This town ain't big enough for the both of us.
It's like Battle Royale, isn't it? It's just they can be only one. So are you doing this on purpose? Because you have a job in tech and computers. I mean, I wonder if you're not sabotaging this whole thing for your own gain. I do have the power to kick people out, but I'd like to think I'm not that big a bastard.
What's the next letter? J K.
Okay, so that's why I suggested he go out now, because that's Scott. That's Mark.
Well, I will be very surprised if it's not Kreator.
Could be. Here he comes.
Here he is. Is he?
Just wait for him to connect to the stream. 3, 2, 1. He's back in the room, and he's shifted to the right. Let's see. It doesn't look an awful lot better. But,
ladies and gentlemen, Les.
Am I moving?
Not much. But we can hear you. So, do you want to go on with your K?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I can only put it down to the fact that the weather outside here is absolutely atrocious. It is absolutely booting it down. I can hear thunder and everything out there. So I suppose it's pointless bigging me up, isn't it, really? If all you can do is hear me. But
Scott put his next choice in as well, by the way.
Go for it, Mark. We're all right.
Okay, so hey, I have gone for Kreator and Extreme Aggression.
Mike predicted Kreator would be on the mix, so
absolutely.
Why have you chosen that one?
Now, I know a lot of people talk about Pleasure to Kill being their sort of definitive album, if you will, and Terrible Certainty, the one that was after that. Extreme Aggression is their 4th album. If I was to introduce anyone to thrash metal, this would be one of the albums that I would advise them to listen to. The name of the album, the music that's on it, it says exactly. It's like Ron Seal. It says exactly what it does. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Extreme aggression. That scream at the very beginning. It's like there's a little bit of a nice riff comes in, and it's just all hell breaks loose. For me, it's got good elements of Pleasure to Kill in it. There's a couple of songs that are raw and they're just full on, but it's more. There's a bit more intelligence to the music for me. It's got some lovely melodic parts. Some Pain Will Last, Love Us or Hate Us. Just an awesome album. For me, their best release. Excuse me. Like I say, Pleasure to Kill, a lot of people love that, and I love that as well. But Pleasure to Kill is raw. You know, it's real raw. This is more thought out. This is like, for me, this is what Kreator were building up to. For me, like I say, it's one of the best thrash albums I've ever heard, still to this day.
Well, with Kreator, I mean, when that album was due to drop, I was on holiday in Yugoslavia, and they were on tour with Voivod, and I was hoping that I could try and catch them, but I didn't. But I was so ready for that album to drop. I was counting the days down. Kreator have always been huge for me, and I thought I loved Kreator in the 80s. I mean, I really, really loved them in the 80s. And that album was like, I think that's the best of the first phase of Kreator. Since 2001, they've come with a modern sound and absolutely, for me, destroyed what they've done in the 80s. And I'm just a huge fan of them anyway, and of Millie Petrosa. But that is an awesome album, yeah, and it does mix the early sort of almost barked out black metal sort of influenced albums like Endless Pain and stuff, because they're quite raw. Endless Pain's quite raw, like the first Sepultura album and stuff. But like you say, they got a bit of money put into them for Extreme Aggressions, and Betrayer, they got a video out for that and stuff, and it's fantastic. Yeah, Kreator don't do any wrong for me, apart from in the late 90s. I kind of lost me interest in after Cause for Conflict, but you know, it's a killer album. It's a good 8.5 out of 10 for me. That one. I'm done.
Well, I haven't really got a lot to give. I was put off by Kreator early on. They just never ever clicked with me. I've heard they're more palatable these days, so at some point I will no doubt try and get in there and see what it's all about. But yeah, not a band that's really floated my boat, to be honest with you.
I think if you've been getting more into the, you know, when we spoke about sort of Hell Ripper and bands like that more sort of barked vocal style, I think if you listen to Extreme Aggression or maybe Coma of Souls by Kreator, I think if you're more open to that harsh, blackened sort of vocal, and that's what Millie Petrosa is all about. And I think you probably enjoy it. I really do. I think the newer stuff is very good. It's certainly, you know, more modern thrash. It's funny because the new stuff by Kreator is good. I like it, but it almost doesn't quite sound like Kreator, the Kreator that I know. You know, it's that modern. It's a little bit more melodic than the late 80s, early 90s stuff. Still very good, and I think that's the same for a lot of bands, you know, whether it's Testament, Death Angel, Exodus. The newer stuff's great, but it does always sound a little bit different to the style he had 20, 25 years ago.
See, I actually think Kreator and Overkill are better now than they ever were.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue with the output of the new stuff at all, but it's almost, for me, almost feels like a different band, you know. So it doesn't upset me because I kind of don't compare the new stuff to the old stuff. I do look at it a little bit separately, if that makes sense, you know.
Yeah. What's the next letter, Andy?
It's L, I think. We've just yeah. Check them out. I've got a number anyway. Yeah, so I have gone for I haven't. Back in the room. Wrong button. I have gone for a Loudness of Thunder in the East. I had to get one Music for Nations album in here at least, so I went with these guys from Japan. Actually, our second Japanese outing of the night. Obviously, with Scott choosing Ezio earlier on, but yeah, this is just straight up rocking heavy metal. It's no frills, not a lot that you haven't heard before, but I just love it. Yeah, just really, again, upbeat heavy metal. The Japanese just seem to consume everything that was heavy metal at the time, and certainly bands like Loudness and Bow Wow, and really an Earthshaker as well, all did pretty cool stuff. Songs on here, so check out Crazy Nights, the opener is pretty good. Like Hell is pretty good. That's quite a heavy one. No Way Out, Run for Your Life. It's just good to hear these kind of albums. That's what I particularly liked about Music for Nations. They kind of brought a lot of bands that you wouldn't have heard of in the UK, very much like Combat did in the US and bands I did in Canada. But I did have another choice for L at the time, but in hindsight, I thought I would go for something just a little bit different and check in a bit of Loudness. And I hadn't heard this album for quite a long time. But yeah, good stuff. Have you guys heard of this before?
I thought they began with R. I thought it was Loudness.
A bit Piers Morgan there.
I know what you've just told me. I have no idea about that band at all, I'm afraid. So it's over to that guy. No, that. Just get on with it.
Good at that one. Him.
I'm exactly the same. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear what Andy was talking about. The sound had gone off. But I have seen Andy showed that before in videos. If I remember right, are they Japanese?
Yes, that's right, mate.
Yeah, I'm struggling to hear Andy on there. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I'm only familiar with them from people in the VC showing them. I'd never even heard of them until I joined YouTube and seeing people show it. So I'm completely naive to them. It's definitely a band that I'm going to check out, as I always try to check out the bands that I hear about that I don't know how. It's good to educate yourself, isn't it? Whether you like it or not, you've got to give it a little whirl. But yeah, I don't know much about that band.
I actually prefer this one, the one that came.
Album there, yeah.
Lightning Strike.
Maybe that's what's happened to this live stream, because I can't hear. I can hear Mike, but I can't hear Andy. So,
all right. Well, it seems like we're having a few.
I can't see Scott. Where's Scott? He's not back, is he? He's gone to. I was going to say he's gone to the pub, but he can't go to the pub.
Right. So, given that we've had technical difficulties with Scott and Mark, you're having a few too. We did say that we were initially going to go on till 11 our time. We're obviously not going to get through to Zed, which isn't a surprise at all. should we leave it at L for this week, or do you guys want to carry on?
How many people are watching?
25 we've got on the moment.
I don't think you can stop a live stream with 25 people watching, Andy.
Is it worth,
ask those people if you want us to stop.
I can see Andy. I'm not sure whether it's worth me just leaving and coming back in and see if I can pick it up again.
You could
try see Andy fine.
Yeah, you could try.
So
just give it a go.
And I can only put it down to, like I said before, it's got to be this. It's got to be the way. It's got to be.
Yeah. What's the next letter?
Or what we might be able to do is, Mike, you can translate whatever Andy says. You let me know because I can hear you.
He's only Welsh.
I can't believe you could hear one and not the other. It's just, yeah, it was Scott and an M. I know which one he was going for as well. So,
right. So, do you want to mention Scott's album?
So I mentioned Scott's album. I'm just going to take a quick break so you guys can go into it. So we've got Metal Church and Blessing in Disguise.
Can I just get my CD to refresh my memory? Hang on.
Go. Well, the public have spoken.
Well, it's nice that people don't want to stop anyway. That's a good thing. We're not boring people silly at this point anyway.
Yeah, I will be. You familiarise yourself, Mike, and talk with Mark, and I'll just be back in a sec.
Well, do you reckon I should talk about this Metal Church album of Scott's pick? Badlands, to me, is just fantastic. What a song that is. These were guys that. You know, when you're getting into metal and you get these albums where some of your friends have got it, but you haven't got around to picking it up, just because there's so much stuff, you're aware of it, but you couldn't possibly buy everything as a kid. And Metal Church were a band that, for whatever reason, I didn't own myself, and it was VCLT off Darcy. He sent me the first 3 Metal Church albums, but I've added 2 of them since then because I really enjoy them. But because I got them all at the same time, and I've added 2 of them, and I've been listening to them, I can't really. I'm no expert on, but this is the first one with Mike Howe on vocals.
That's right.
He's my favourite Metal Church vocalist. So I'm glad he's back in them. But this album, when I first got them off Darcy and I listened to them, this was the one that jumped out for me. I really enjoy it. It's of the same sort of, it's that American 80s power metal sort of thing. And you know, there was other guys who bought these albums back in the day out of my friends. And I didn't. I opted for other things. But now that I've heard them, I really enjoy them. And this is an awesome album. And out of the first 3, I know a lot of people like The Dark or the first album stuff, but this is actually my favourite of the first 3 albums. I like Mike Howe better than the other guys.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. Mike Howe is a great vocalist. It was my Church as well. The Dark, all afterwards. I've always enjoyed that album. I always loved the song "Watch the Children Pray" on it. I thought that was a great tune. But I don't know if my picture's moving or you can see me or what, but if you can hear me, that's always a bonus. Fake Healer.
I'm going to get another drink.
Yeah, cool. Fake Healer was the first song I heard by Metal Church. I'm not even sure if that was on MTV or the Power Hour or something like that. But yeah, just a solid album. That it was kind of like the gap between thrash. It wasn't quite thrash. It was sort of heavy metal, power metal. But it appealed to me as a thrash metal fan. And funnily enough, because the second song on this album is called Rest in Pieces, and it's got the date, and it was the date the Titanic sank. I always remember the year that the Titanic sank, not from what I learned at school, but from remembering the song title by Metal Church. So there you go. It's metal is an education for us all, isn't it? But yeah, great album. Mike Howe's vocals brilliant.
That's quite interesting because most of what I know from history, I know from bands like Iron Maiden.
I can't hear you at all, I'm afraid. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, we might have Scott back in the room.
Oh, here we go. Scott might making a reappearance.
This is my last chance.
I hope so.
So Scott,
I'm enjoying the video, but you guys are doing it amazing.
It must be the weather.
Blessing in Disguise was your choice, Scott. Why don't you give us your...
Yes, well, I'll try and show at least another album before I go off here again. Blessing in Disguise. I picked this. It's
looking at my face all the time, isn't it?
It's basically the first Metal Church album I heard. And because of Mike Howe's vocals are just so unique, I went back and actually listened to The Dark. The Dark was an album that a lot of people in the VC are mentioning. I'd never heard it because obviously that was like the switch between David Wayne and Mike Howe, and I think they're both absolutely amazing vocalists. And I love Metal Church now, but Mike Howe for me now kind of tops David Wayne. He's just got a really unique voice. He goes from like what's the song on this? He goes really soft into screams, and it's flawless. And that's not even mentioning the music, because the music on that album is amazing. And I know it kind of gets compared a lot to The Dark because that was the two kind of crossover albums. But for me, that's just one of Metal Church's all-time top albums. I got through it.
Yeah.
Well done. Welcome back.
It's good to see you back, Scott. Anyway, I'm pleased
I
to see
know.
you there.
Don't try and talk to me. I can't hear you.
A lot of people have been commenting about David Wayne being the Metal Church vocalist or whatever.
Yeah, but that's just Rob. Just ignore him. He'll go away.
I think it comes down to that thing again. It's the album that you've been introduced to them. It's got to be simple as that. Because I was lucky enough to get the debut by Metal Church off Darcy myself, and I'd never heard it, and it is an absolute blinder of an album, an absolute cracker. Why I'd never heard it before, I don't know. I don't know why. So that and The Dark are both great albums, but because I think Blessing in Disguise was my introduction to Metal Church, and you obviously being in England, you'll know these guys. People talk about Sean Connery or Roger Moore is the best Bond, and it's always down to when you were born. If you were born when Roger Moore was James Bond, you gravitate towards him. If you're a bit older and Sean Connery is James Bond, that's who you gravitate. And I think it's just the same music. If you listen to a band and Mike Howe's to sing, that's your introduction to him. So it kind of has more of a personal. It resonates with you more,
Yeah, I get
Have
you.
you
I mean,
had an input,
that's what it's
Cloud?
like for. That's what it's like for a lot of albums.
I can't get a word in edgeways. I'm happy that we've got Scott here for him to make up for his lost time.
Oh,
video.
sorry, am I just jumping in?
It's your pick. So you say before you bugger off again, I think it'd be worthwhile hearing what you got to say.
I was just going to say, because Mark mentioned about a certain album you come into a band with, that's an album that does kind of stick with you. I mean, if you came in at the debut would probably be your favourite album. If you come in 4 albums in, that's going to be your favourite album because that's like your gateway album into that band. So it's always going to hold that kind of special place in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, I'm gonna leave, come back in again because I want to be able to hear Andy. I can hear Scott. I can't hear Andy, so I'm gonna get out and back in again. I won't be a minute, guys.
All right. Well, I don't know why I'm saying that, Mark, because you can't hear me. But
have you any input, Mark? Andy?
Yeah, but I kind of feel like Mark's waiting for me. So no. So he's gonna have to catch up on the recording. I hope you guys are all gonna rewatch yourselves back again. I know I will. Yeah. So my introduction to Metal Church was The Dark, and I bought that album back when it came out, and it didn't click with me originally, but I still kind of it still sounded weird when I heard like how albums later on. And I love those last 2 Metal Church albums. I only picked up I got the most recent one is VCLT in the last couple of weeks, and 11 as well is great, and Blessed Disguise, and the Human Factor as well is also a really good one. But the first 2 Metal Church albums, they kind of got a special place for me, even though The Dark didn't click originally. And part of that was David Wayne's voice, but it did grow on me after a while. But yeah, they're another band that just seems to go from strength to strength. That I wouldn't say they're better now. They're different. They're obviously going to change a lot in 30 plus years, but they're still putting out good material. They don't feel like they're just a tribute to the fallen selves, and they just keep going because they want to make some money out of it. I think there's too many bands about at the moment, and maybe they haven't released anything for 30 years, and they're doing it now because there's an interest in the genre rather than in them themselves.
They've never stopped, really, have they? So
Yeah, I know.
There's a big difference. Like Overkill, Metal Church, Flotsam and Jetsam, them guys have Kreator. Them guys have never stopped. Sacred Reich comes back after all these years, and to be honest, I just think, oh, fuck off. You know what I mean?
I thought they were right. Yeah, I thought they feel like they're cashing in, and I know lots of people love that new album. But when I saw your review of it, Mike, I thought it was funny. But then when I listened to it, yeah, I thought it was all true.
Are we moving up a letter?
Yeah, let's go on. We have it's been a while, isn't it? So we have you with N, Mike. Do you want me to pick you up? There we go. Yeah, you see, I'm nearly on the ball now. It's taking 2 hours, but
so game over.
Superb.
This was my introduction to Nuclear Assault, and I spent more time with this because I was so young. I was like 13 when this came out, and I discovered this via somebody else within months of its release. So I spent more time with this thing than Survive, although I spent more time obviously with my favorite handle with Care, but this was just fantastic. I couldn't believe the whole. I didn't even sort of care that there was an Anthrax link, even though Anthrax are my favorite band, and that I didn't care. These were the whole sort of package on their own, and silly little songs like "Hang the Pope" and the Mr. Softy theme were good to try and be daft kids to when we were that age. But the whole album was just fantastic. And Once Upon a Time, this was as heavy as I ever got back then. And Dan Lilker is the nicest guy ever that you can meet.
Well, you've finally shown one that I am pretty familiar with as well. I was trying to. That one's got Brain Death on, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Brain Death was my introduction.
Well, can you just?
All right, I'm reaching for records, man. I'm not just here for you. Yeah. So. Yeah, Brain Death, the last song, or the 7-minute one at the end. That was my introduction to Nuclear Assault. And I can't remember if I got into them because of the Dan Ilka link or not. But I picked up the 12-inch of that, and God, I love that song. It's just, it's kind of relentless. It's slow for a thrash song, but it just builds up and it builds up and it builds up. So, but that was the only Nuclear Assault I had back in the 80s that I owned, and then when I started collecting stuff again recently, it was one of the first albums I had to get. I had to get the rest of the album. I had to hear what the rest of the album was all about, and probably still my favorite Nuclear Assault album.
Yeah, great album. Wasn't my introduction to Nuclear Assault. It was the Plague. The Plague EP was my sort of introduction to them. But it always had, I don't know if it's them being from New York, but there was something about Game Over it, a real sort of aggressive, sort of, that CBGB's kind of attitude that was sort of renowned for New York. But yeah, just a great album. Like you say, Hang the Pope, I suppose the age we were when we were getting into music and listening to it, Hang the Pope definitely drew you in because it was controversial and it was like, yeah, anti this, anti that. But the song Brain Death, I mean, 7 minutes long, a thrash song that's 7 minutes long. At that time, they were usually 3 or 4 minutes. They were in and out. So I get what you mean, what you're talking about, Andy, when you say kind of it's on, but it doesn't feel like a long song when you listen to it. But yeah, great album. Dan Lilker, he can do no wrong in my eyes.
Dan Lilker's got a book out, as well. And the only person I've ever seen show that book is, Patrick Ground Zero Salem. He's got that book. Yeah, really mega expensive, mega rare, but he's got a video up because that guy's got a fucking tremendous channel, and he's got a video where he shows all his books, and I was there. I was watching that video with like a pen and a bit of paper, and he's got Tom G. Warrior's biography and Dan Lilker's biography. I was like, oh, fuck's sake, this guy's costing me a fortune, but you can't get hold of them. They're just too much. They're like 60, 70 quid. You're just not going to buy them for that. But, I would love that to get a reissue. Dan Lilker's biography, that's what wants reissued.
Yeah. He's, I was to meet him. I went to see him. I've told Mike this before, but I went to see him live in Morecambe, of all places. And Dan Lilker was by far the friendliest out of all. They were all nice fellas, but Dan Lilker was the guy who sort of spent time speaking to all those young lads. But top guy. I mean, I love him even in Brutal Truth when he went on to do the more extreme sort of death metal, sort of meets grindcore. And he's been involved in all sorts, and he still is now. I'm sure I saw a show online where he was interviewing other musicians. I forget what it was called now, but he's certainly very much part of the scene, and he always has been, hasn't he, since the late 80s, really.
That Ground Zero Salem guy described him as a journeyman, and I thought, fucking hell, yeah, that's it. He's a journeyman, isn't he, Dan Lilker? It's tremendous.
He loves it. You can see he just loves it. He loves to be involved in it. He loves to play the music. He's proper. He's proper metal, and he's a metal man.
Did you see the video posted earlier this week with Dan Lilker, Scott Ian, and Charlie Bianchi doing the March of SOD? Yeah. That was class.
Yeah, that was absolutely class. A bit like us here, us three now.
Do people realise that in the VC that Chris Hansen was, and he's sometimes Charlie Benante's drum tech. I mean, do they know that or not? Or is that like a secret?
I think it's just his hobby.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I knew that.
You didn't know?
No.
Oh yeah, he's Charlie Benante's drum tech. When Anthrax come to town, like Chris Hansen lives in Tennessee, when Anthrax come anywhere near, they ring him up and give him complimentary for him and the wife and that. And, you know, get down here, buddy, and all this business. He's well in with Anthrax, like.
Yeah. Mike, he's not that well in with Anthrax actually, because when Anthrax played on the Slayer final tour and they came to Glasgow, I sent a message to Chris and said, "Tell Charlie I want to hear Gung Ho on the set because I think that song would be brilliant live." And they didn't play it. He let me down.
Little bastard, eh?
He let me down. What can I say?
What's next letter?
I don't know what did we just do.
It's me. Can you see? Am I moving? Am I like not just the audio? Can you actually see me?
No, I can see you, but you're not moving that quickly.
Oh dear.
It's 3 frames an hour.
Right. Okay. Anyway, let's go for it. This is and I'm going to show Cause of Death by Obituary.
It's okay. We can see that.
You see that now there?
Yeah, we can see that. Cloudy's heart's just sunk, but we can see it.
Yeah. I know, yeah. This is for people who don't know death metal, this is without a doubt a top 10 death metal album. I would have thought anyone got into the genre when I did, 1989, 1990. This is a stone cold classic, simple as that. James Murphy had joined the band. James Murphy's quite a famous sort of Floridian metal musician. He moved from band to band in the sort of early 90s, played with Death, Cancer, had his own little project going. And actually, this album, they do a cover of Circle of the Tyrants by Celtic Frost. I had never heard Celtic Frost until I heard this album. And this was the album that turned me on to them. Also, I mentioned about Godflesh earlier, the band's the band picture on the back, the t-shirts they're wearing. It was the bass player had the Godflesh t-shirt. Guitar-wise, it's not what you would. It's a funny sound, if you will. That's coming. It's kind of the guitars have got almost. It's like a HM2 pedal, the Stockholm sound, but with the distortion turned right off. It's a real unique guitar tone, and the riffs. It's not, when people talk about death metal, they talk about Morbid Angel, Dayside. Obituary weren't ever a fast death metal band. They always had that doomy sound to them. Real sort of long, like not big solos, not technical solos. It was all about just adding a sound on top of the riffs. Just an absolute classic. And again, like I said with Kreator, if aliens landed on Earth and wanted to know, the meaning of death metal, this is probably one of the albums that I would play for them. It's an absolute belter. And before Mike says anything, I don't have a bad word said against it. Simple as that. The only thing that's not right with this album is it's not got the song Intoxicated on it, which was off Obituary's first album, which is just an absolute blinder of a song. But yeah, this is again, if we were able to pull you, Andy, over to the dark side, this is the album I'd like you to listen to. Give this a whirl.
Well,
he's not going to listen to that in a million.
I've seen Obituary live.
Of course, supporting Anthrax and Lamb of God, yes.
Yeah, so when I saw Obituary, Anthrax, Lamb of God, and Slayer, Obituary were the third best band on the bill.
Okay. I know what you think of Lamb of God, yeah.
Well,
no more guitar sounds, Hollow Man, no more guitar sounds.
Oh, good. You can see the comments then, can you, Mark? I was wondering.
Yeah, I can see the comments. Yeah.
And
I'm gonna give up with the guitar sounds. That's for sure.
And can you see Mike and I are our cams and audio okay for you?
I can hear you both. Since I logged out and logged back in, I can see both of you two perfect. I believe you can hear me. My girlfriend sending me a little text saying that they can hear me, but I'm not moving very much, which is probably not a bad thing, eh?
Your girlfriend's watching me on the television.
She is, yeah.
You are very trusting.
I've told you she watches. She's that certain video that you posted up not long ago with thousands and thousands of views. Most of them are her.
Don't blame me if she sleeps tonight with a row of pillars down the middle of the bed. This is what God gave me.
I did share Mike's channel with my wife, Mark. You're a very brave man.
Yeah.
People usually share my channel with the other ours if they've got some food stuck in the gullet or something like that. That obituary are full on Celtic frost worship. I think that is a fantastic album. I prefer Slowly We Rot, but that's got chopped in half on it, and it's an awesome album. And I don't go beyond the first three albums. I know people sort of go into these bands and they listen to loads and loads of albums and maybe the full catalogues and that. But I just think, to be honest, if you buy one Obituary album, you've bought them all. And I might get shot down for that. But I do like the first three. There's enough of a difference in the first three that I can get my teeth into. I hate World Demise. But that is a good album, and it's a staple in any death metal collection, definitely. Was that supposed to be, that cover supposed to be the Sepultura Arise cover, and then they offered it to Obituary first? They'd finished it. I'm sure there was some sort of, this is the album cover, and then depending on which band come out the studio first, they got it. And Obituary got the Cause of Death cover before Sepultura, and they ended up with the Arise cover. Is there something to do with that, isn't there?
I have heard that. Yeah. And I mean, there is a song on Cause of Death called Finds the Arise. So I suppose I don't know, but I believe it was the artwork for an H.P. Lovecraft book, I believe. I don't know if I've said this before, but Demolition Hammer.
Dane Horn.
Great album, amazing artwork. Yeah, one of the best covers ever for me. But yeah, it was a H.P. Lovecraft book this art was in. And there's an album by Demolition Hammer, their second album, Epidemic of Violence. And that's got the next bit of this artwork that kind of goes on there. So it's actually only half of the original painting. But I have heard that story about the artwork. I don't know whether that's how true that, because I suppose looking at them now, to think of Arise being that cover and Cause Death being the other cover doesn't kind of seem right, does it?
No, but it's what you get used to. Did you realise, I don't know whether anyone else watching this realises, and I'm sorry to jump in and when it's not my turn and go off topic, but did you realise that Testament, Practice What You Preach, and Faith No More, The Real Thing, was supposed to be the other way around as far as artwork goes?
I've heard you mention that before, yeah, and that's another mind-blowing fact.
It's mental.
That just doesn't seem right.
You just can't. Yeah, you can't imagine that switching round.
No.
Yeah, I thought when
you cause a death opinion.
When you were talking about the switching albums, I'm sure I've heard you talk about that before, but it didn't twig with this album, but it does with the Testament. I think you've mentioned that one before.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I tried to pad out a video with that info one day. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Should we move on to P?
Yeah.
So, I'm heavily in the new wave of British heavy metal for this video, but this kind of surprised me because I listened to this for a long time, but this is an album I would have picked out and said, great album, great example of the British heavy metal at the time, but it's really not. It's a lot more melodic, and it's not as good as I thought it was, to be honest with you. It's a classic album, but I can kind of see why they only got I think they only did one album in the 80s, and they've recently reformed, and they're another band that have a few albums recently, and I ended up passing it on to Bev because it was just far too melodic for me. Now this isn't far too melodic for me, but it's getting there. There's even a Kinks cover on here, All Day and All the Night, which I didn't realize was on there to start with. It just doesn't start the best way. Cheated isn't a great song. All Day and All the Night is to me a terrible cover. Not that I'm a big Kinks fan anyway, but the Kinks version is better. But it does get better throughout, but it's a little bit too melodic. And just doing this video today and me picking this out, listening to it, expecting to kind of tell everybody what a wonderful album it is, it just hasn't really hit for me again. The artwork is fantastic. The artwork is Rodney Matthews, who did a lot of sort of rock and metal album covers. He's done a lot of the Magnum covers. He's done Nazareth covers. So the artwork is fantastic, but it's not an album I thought was as good as I thought it was before I did a little bit of prep for this video. So there we go. What a way to find out. Are you guys familiar with that?
Well, I tell you what, Andy, it's a good idea to tell the viewers who that is. I mean, I know that's Praying Mantis, but you never mentioned them.
Did I not even say? Oh, Christ. Praying Mantis, Time Tells No Lies, from, 81?
I seen Praying Mantis live a couple of years ago, opening for Y&T at York Fibbers. And they were actually pretty entertaining. They were quite good. I don't know whether it was the original lineup or anything. I don't know anything about them, but they were quite entertaining. They were a nice support band. I could see why Y&T had got them as the support act for that tour. But I don't honestly know anything about them. I don't know whether that's an old album or one of the newer albums. I know they've come back because they were selling stuff on the night, but and I enjoyed them to the degree where I grabbed one of the CDs, stood at the stall waiting to pay for it, and I was like, yeah, they were good enough, I'm going to buy this. And I stood at the stall for ages waiting to pay for this CD, and no one come along, so I put it back and just come out without anything. So, and I've now forgot about them, to be honest. So
they released that one in 81, and then they didn't release anything else until 10 years later. So it kind of showed that they obviously never clicked with the world. But I always had really fond memories of it, so that's what really surprised me when I listened to it and thought, where did these fond memories come from? It's just not the album I thought it was. It's not terrible, it's not bad. It just wasn't what I thought I remembered it to be.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not. I've heard of them. I'm aware that they were a new wave of British heavy metal band, and I'm sure a few of the albums I've seen, the covers are always. I'm sure there's 2 albums I've seen by them. The covers are really quite impressive. So they would, especially for me, I love a good cover, so I would be drawn in. But it's a band I've never ever heard. I've never even heard them. I've never even seen them on a compilation or kind of heard them just, at any point. I don't remember. If I have heard them, I don't remember them. But the covers certainly interest me.
I don't know if it's just me, Mark, but I didn't get any of that. You're breaking up a lot.
Okay.
I heard him. He said he hasn't heard them. He's heard of them and all the rest of it, and the covers of interest, but he just hasn't heard the band.
So I think Andy's picture was breaking up on my phone. So maybe
yeah. It's my internet playing silly buggers now.
Should we move on to Scott's pick?
Yeah. Again, thankfully he's been pretty mainstream with his picks, because I can show you what he was going to choose.
Yeah, I can do that. Woohoo!
I can't see Mark's camera at all now. So can you see me, Mike?
I can see you. I can't see Mark moving. It just looks like he's sneezing. It just looks like he's spreading COVID-19 all up in that place.
It's completely black for me, so I'm gonna see if I can remove him and add him again. There we go.
It's for the best.
No, it's black. Oh, there we go. It's kind of a bit better.
Ladies and gentlemen, Les.
I'll try and leave and see if it works for me. I'll give it another whirl. I won't be long, guys.
Go on, Andy. You can talk about Queensrÿche.
So I like this album. I know everyone is supposed to like Operation Mindcrime the best, or The Warning, but I really, really like this one. This might be my favorite one that I've got, and I don't have a lot of Queensrÿche at all. First 3 albums, and I only got Operation Mindcrime because I was going to see Jeff Tate live last year, to be honest.
I think I saw him the day after you, didn't I?
Yeah, something like that. It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
His daughter was not so good, but
I Dream in Infrared is a killer tune. I really like early Queensrÿche, and just actually this week I've been listening to like all the Queensrÿche stuff I've got, which is up to and including Empire, and thoroughly enjoy it. I'm all about that. I don't know anything about. That's Rob saying, are we still on dial-up? I know you'd think so, wouldn't you? It's mental. I enjoy everything of Queensrÿche up until Empire, and the only reason I say that is because I don't own anything else. So it might be awesome. It sounds like Bruce Dickinson. It's more melodic, and there's some killer stuff, but I think Jeff Tate's quite arrogant.
yeah, that's unquestionable, I think. But yeah, I enjoy it. I don't know why I never actually. Well, let's just turn and wait for Mark to rejoin. Why don't you give us a rendition of The Warning that you did in one of your videos a while back?
What?
Oh, sorry. Have I put you on the spot? Maybe.
Oh, don't worry about that. Warning. That is shit. I mean, I can find better things on that album to sell someone that album, but Warning is just like one of them. Oh, no shame. No embarrassment here. None whatsoever. Don't worry about that.
No. And I wasn't trying to shame you.
Oh!
I was just trying to relive that memory, because that is honestly one of my favourite, probably, YouTube moments of the VC was when you did that. Absolutely fantastic stuff.
Have the numbers plummeted? The watches plummeted now, Andy. Are we in single figures yet now?
We've gone up to 2,000 after that solo. No, sorry, 29. No, we're still doing good. I'm really the turnout tonight has been absolutely.
The turnout tonight's been phenomenal. I mean, seriously, I didn't expect to get. We done this for us, and then for other people primarily to watch later on, and for the amount of people that you've been saying that's turned out tonight to watch this as it unfolds, as this absolute shit show unfolds.
It's just a shame they all turned up to watch Scott.
Hats off. Look at this. Look at this hair. Do you? I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Warning.
Am I on? Can you see me there?
Yeah, and you're moving. And, in fact, you look like you've lost weight, Mark, since the last time we saw you.
You and Scott live in the same house. Do you get the same broadband?
Well, I was looking. I think on my phone, I've moved it because it was going from my Wi-Fi onto 4G and back again. So it was like buffering between the two, if that's the right terminology. I don't know. But,
you need to put it in the shed when you're doing live streams.
Yeah, I didn't realise.
Mike, what's your impression of Macabre?
You know, Baker off the Muppets. Baker off the Muppets.
You should do your own live stream of impressions.
Honestly, Dean Holmes doesn't make videos, but he's a superb subscriber. Been subscribed to me for a long time. He's a great guy.
There's a few people who watch, especially my videos, and you know, the same as you guys, Andy and Mike and Scott. You always comment, but there's a few guys who always comment. They always take the time out to leave a little comment. You know, I mean, there's plenty of people who watch the videos, but I love the fact that a lot of the guys just take that little bit of time to leave a comment, and it makes it all worthwhile.
Going on camera, and I watched like Renee for weeks and weeks. I watched Renee before I was prepared to make a video, and then he goes and blows it out the water with his Judas Priest firepower video, and then I just think, I wish I hadn't even put my camera on, because he fucking nails it. His passion is unsurpassed. Renee's fucking superb.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But yeah, Dean Holmes, he always leaves a comment. Good on you, Dean. And there's Paul DeVito, he always leaves a comment. Yeah. You know, there's plenty of people who don't make videos who leave
Paul always
comments.
gives me a good recommendation every video I post. I always get just pick this up, you should check this out. And I love that.
It's a great community, and the extended community. When you think, I mean, I would run out of petrol by the time I found somebody that was as interested in metal as I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have to go to your house, Mark, or like Chris Barron's house, somebody like that. I would literally have to drive to your house to find somebody that I could talk like this to.
Yeah,
you know.
I think Darcy said that, hasn't he? You know, Darcy being where he is over in Canada, and he said it was all about, you know, he's got friends who are in it, but you know, I was the same as you guys. I'm sure you're watching all the videos and you're just thinking, wow, these guys have got that same passion for collecting, and you kind of want to be involved in it because you know that the people you're talking to or the people who are watching you understand exactly where you're coming from, whether or not they're into the same styles of music. You know, some of us are into the heavier stuff and what have you, but I think
we all cross over though. We all cross over.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I was saying it before. It's you know, making videos and seeing, you know, Andy speaking about albums and Bev and Darcy and Frankie and all these people, all these different styles of music. It proper opens me up. It's cost me a fucking fortune, man. But you know, I think. Do you know what? I've heard of them. I've never given them a chance. I need to now because this guy's talking about them passionately. You know, and that's one of the beauties of it for me.
Let's get to the next letter.
Well, Mike R, I think you're on.
I can't hear Andy now.
Oh,
Andy's
for goodness sake.
completely silent.
Get a grip.
Right, big me up, Andy.
Oh yes, sorry, mate. There we go. Woohoo!
Rage Against the Machine, self-titled from 1992. You can put me back on the 3 screen now, if you will.
No. You asked for it, you've got it.
All right, fuck you. Right, well, when I was a kid, I was 19 when this came out, and this was like full of. It's very politically driven, which I'm not political at all, but and I didn't get behind any of the. I didn't really take any notice of that. I just like the aggression that was in it and stuff like that. I listened to this today to refresh my memory, and I was torn all the way through, all 45 minutes of it. I was torn from 1 minute thinking this is still fantastic to the next minute thinking this is a piece of dated shit that I never want to listen to again. And I mean, I don't know, it's very much of the time. And I think I ended up after the whole 10 songs thinking if I never hear that again, so what? It's just sort of something I put in here to say that's how much your tastes can change over time with age. If I never hear that album again, I'm not fussed. Even though I understand its importance in metal history, and any young sort of full of teenage angst kids, if they get into it, I would even recommend it to the younger end, but it's very much a young person's record, in my opinion.
I have never heard that album. I know of them. I know what they sound like. I remember the video to that song they did where they just turned up and then they got kicked out, and but never ever appealed to me. It's not that it's actually bad. I don't say it's terrible, but they just never appealed to me at all.
Yeah, it was the vocals always put me off a little bit. I thought the rhythm section was good. I always enjoyed Tom Morello's guitar playing. I wasn't quite a big fan of all those solos and things like that, but I think at the time I quite enjoyed it. I do feel it is quite dated now, but I do like Tom Morello, and I even quite enjoy some of the Audio Slave stuff that he did. Yeah, take care, Dan. Thanks for watching, mate. But yeah, it's not an album that I would gravitate towards now. If I ever hear Killing in the Name of or something like that, and it's being played somewhere, I've not heard that song for a long time. I don't dislike it, but it's certainly not an album that I listen to anymore. I think it was definitely of its time, no doubt about it. And it was probably one of those albums that introduced people who weren't into metal to metal. Yeah, guitar noise repertoire is growing. I need to stop doing that, don't I?
Never stop. She's trademark, Mark. Trademark.
It is
Trademark.
now, yeah.
There we go.
It is now, yeah. Trademark with a C.
Next letter.
It's me, S. And this is
Sadist.
Probably one of the best UK thrash albums ever made, in my opinion. I know Mike might disagree because he's a big fan of the first
Screamer.
one.
Oh, Sabbat.
But if you can see that Dreamweaver, and again, I'm going to go back to that thing that I spoke about on a personal level. This was my introduction to Sabbat. I'd not heard them, and a few of my friends were going to see them live, and they said, "Come along." So I did, and it was their sort of tour supporting this album. Martin Walkier, if that's how you pronounce his surname, just a fabulous vocalist. He barks the words out. He is just every song. There must be thousands and thousands of words to every song. His lyrical content is just it's machine gun. You know, it's fabulous. Just great musicianship, great bass player, great drummer. And they were. It was one of the first bands that I'd heard that would sort of change the tempo without having a little bridge to it. They would just go from one speed to another, and it was relentless. Great bits of acoustic guitar in there. Definitely up there in my sort of top 3 of UK thrash albums. A History of a Time to Come, their debut. I've grown to love that, and I'm sure Michael will talk about that very shortly. But this for me is their best album. The song "The Clerical Conspiracy," what a tune that is! I still sing along.
I have wealth beyond measure.
Exactly, the clerical conspiracy is here to watch we fear.
So
not only am I doing guitar sounds, but I'm even attempting to sing like Martin. But yeah, if you guys watching have not heard Sabbat Dreamweaver, it's a definite one of the best thrash albums to ever come out of the UK, in my opinion. Noise Records from 1989.
Well, picking your favourite Sabbath album out of History of a Time to Come and Dreamweaver is like picking, do you like your son or your daughter better? I mean, they're both fantastic. And for me, even as much as I love Zentric Shattered Existence, and I do love that, the first 2 Sabbath albums are just unbelievable. And like you say, the Dreamweaver has got, it's like fucking War and Peace, the lyric sheet. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it came in this fucking proper LP-sized booklet when it came. And, you know, trying to get the CD copy out the tray, you got to put your feet on the fucking plastic and pull it out. The lyrics are it's just unbelievable. And it's harsher than History of a Time to Come. It's definitely harsher, but it's only at its worst. It's only a 9 out of 10 at its worst, and that's when I can't be asked listening to music. That it's just a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic. Martin Walkier. All my passwords and account names and everything is all named after Martin Walkier lyrics. Can you believe that? Vintage Wine is a Skyclad song. I won't tell you my passwords, but if you know the Skyclad and you've got time, you'll crack all my passwords.
You would need some time as well with the amount of lyrics that he used to write.
He's like a fucking almanac of metal. Go on, Andy.
Well, my introduction to Sabbat, it's still the only Sabbat I only have, is this one, and it's a bit of a mess.
It's diabolical.
It sounds the more you
vocal, is that right?
And it sounds like everybody, like they're not getting on, and they've all had an idea about what album they want to do, and they've all come in and played at the same time. Like maybe they're warming up, like when the orchestra warms up, it sounds shit, but they're warming up. And it kind of sounds like they've all they're playing their own thing.
That's the ginger stepchild of Sabbat albums.
But obviously, Sabbat has one of your favourite producers, Mike.
I'm getting another drink.
But there was a comment on here. There's a comment here.
Andy Sneap. He was great guitarist, and he's the guy who's gone on to sort of be a world famous producer, I suppose, hasn't he?
So we have that's I've got a couple of albums. The other one's on CD, but my CDs are all in boxes, so I can't grab them. But it's they're great. But Hell was was it David Halliday? Yeah, that's the one. That's the other one I got on CD.
Yeah,
David Halliday product. And David Halliday taught Andy Sneap how to play guitar, if I remember rightly.
Right, okay.
And he was his protege. And then David Halliday died really early on, so the current lineup of Hell is basically, it's not his tribute to, but it's him carrying on the ideas that David Halliday had at the start. Very theatrical.
I enjoyed that. I wasn't sure what I was going to make of it, to be honest, but I really enjoyed that album. I thought it was different. It wasn't what I was expecting at all, especially from Andy Sneap, I suppose, because he's sort of more renowned for his. Hi, Andrew. Hope you're doing well, mate. Good to hear from you. Yeah, he's more renowned as obviously a thrash metal guitarist, and now he's. I suppose Testament, Exodus, a lot of the top thrash bands are using him, and we've spoke about this before, haven't we? In different videos about as good as a producer he is. It's
he's a bit samey, isn't he?
Yeah, he definitely is. He's obviously he's got a good formula, but he sticks to it,
Let's tell you what. Let's ask Mike his opinion when he comes back, because I think it's going to be comedy gold when it comes to
I do too. Yeah, Mike told me a story about Andy Sneap when he met him, and I don't think Andy Sneap was very impressed, from what I seem to remember of Mike telling me the story. So, yeah. Mike, we were just talking about Andy Sneap.
He hates me. Andy Sneap hates me.
Why is that, Mike?
A few times. I owe him money, and he remembered. It was really embarrassing. He said I had a distinctive accent, and he would know that accent anywhere, and I owed him 20 quid. Fuck him.
I just love the fact that you went up to him and said, "You're Andy Sneap, aren't you?" And he turned around and said, "Yeah, and you're fucking Mike Allen, aren't you?"
My mates were on the floor. They were like, "What the fuck?" And he went, "Yeah, you're the only guy from Cumbria that I've ever spoke to, so I know it's you, because you give me a load of free Sabbath stuff and I sold it." And it's quite embarrassing.
So what was the next for? Why did he owe you 20 quid? Or why did you owe him 20 quid?
Well, I didn't. He signed me records, and he gave me a cap and a T-shirt, and I sold it all and for 20 quid. And then I went to see Nuclear Assault, and he was there, and when I spoke to him, he went, "They call you Michael Allen, don't they?" And I went, "Yeah, yeah," and he went, "Yeah, you fucking sold that stuff. I'll give you it on eBay." And I thought, oh shit, my mates were fucking rolling about laughing. Honestly, it was really embarrassing. I spoke to him on the phone, and he was supposed to produce our demo, and he said he would do a deal for us because we didn't have a record label at the time, and it was £600 a day, and we just couldn't afford it. And looking back on the songs now, if we could have afforded it and spent it on that, I would have fucking killed myself because the songs aren't good enough. Next.
What's next?
Love a tea, please, Bob.
That'll be me. And I have gone. No, that's you. Me.
Yeah, you do. Oh.
I have gone for what I consider to be one of the best debut thrash albums of all time. Not perhaps the best, but one of the best. I love this album, start to finish. Asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said Practice What You Preach is my favourite Testament album. Still love that album, but it's the legacy now. My introduction to Testament was the Live at Eindhoven EP, and it's about half of this album. But from start to finish, Over the Wall, The Haunting, Burnt Offerings, Cotlod, Curse of the Legions of Death, classic song. Do or Die is probably now my favourite Testament song of all time. Absolute classic. Look how young they look there. I mean, Chuck Bully's head alone now is like that big. Fit across the whole album cover. But yeah.
You need to get for it now.
Killer stuff.
I agree. For years, like 30 years, Practice What You Preach was my favourite album, and The Legacy was second. And then for a ranking video I done a couple of years ago, I listened to them again, and I thought, I'm just after 30 odd years, I'm just starting to not love Practice What You Preach quite as much. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still absolute adoration for the album, but The Legacy is fucking ridiculous for a band of that age to be putting that out. I'm not into guitars and solos, but the solo for Over the Wall is off the fucking charts. The whole album is tremendous, and Testament are tremendous, and I just wish I'd got into them a little bit earlier than I did with these last few albums. I might have loved them even more, but they're still my fifth favourite band all these years later. Legacy is tremendous. 10 out of 10.
No, fabulous debut. My introduction to Testament was the New Order, and just fell in love with that album. Especially Skolnick's lead guitar work was just it was on another level. It took the sort of melodic part of it. I just thought, this is incredible. And I had heard Over the Wall. They used to play that quite a lot on Power Hour or MTV's Headbangers Ball. I forget which one it was now. I think it was filmed in, it might have been Alcatraz, or it was definitely filmed in a prison somewhere, I'm sure.
I think it was, yeah.
And it was this fast, in your face thrash metal, and then that middle section comes in that Mike spoke about with that melodic guitar work, and I was just like, yeah, this is something else. These, and you kind of knew listening to that, you knew they were going to be big. You knew that they were on the road to good things, you know. But yeah, fabulous debut, no doubt about it. And obviously, Steve Zetro Souza from Exodus, he was the original singer, wasn't he? And as Darcy pointed out there, yeah, I think quite a few of the lyrics off that debut album were probably penned by Zet, as he's called. But yeah, great album. I wouldn't argue with anyone over that. It's got to be a top 10 thrash debut album of all time, surely.
I wonder, given the size of Chuck's head now, and I don't wish to call attention to it just in case he's a bit self-conscious about it, but whether he could have done those death growls back in the 80s, or whether he needed that extra kind of muscle around his throat to really get guttural.
I tell you what,
Talking about big heads.
One at a time, fellas.
Sorry, talking about big heads, and I don't know if Andy will have ever seen, but I'm sure Mike will. Have you ever seen George Corpse Grinder, the singer of Cannibal Corpse? Have you seen his neck?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a video on YouTube of Corpse Grinder windmilling, right? You've got to see it. Do you know what? I've played that video of Corpse Grinder Fisher windmilling to people, and they've had to look away. It's fucking horrific.
It's relentless, isn't it?
It's horrific. You think to yourself, God bless his fucking medical condition after that.
Yeah,
Just fucking
he's a living bobblehead. Apparently, Chuck Billy. That's one. Maybe that pop thing that they do. They could do a Chuck Billy one, and it'd actually be actual size head.
I tell you what, though, when you think about Chuck Billy compared to other singers, I mean, there's some singers now are absolutely killing it. When you know how old they are, Chuck Billy's one of them. Joey Belladonna is fucking flawless,
phenomenal. Yeah.
Millie Petrova. I know you're not you're not into Kreator, Andy, but Millie Petrova is still absolutely nailing it. Eddie KK from Flotsam and Jetsam is still nailing it. Bobby Blitz, they're fucking destroying it still. Whereas James Hetfield, fuck off. That's just me.
He kind of, I think he had his style, but when he gave up drinking and smoking, which was obviously better for him, his voice just changed.
Yeah.
Not the same, and not that you kind of wish he carry on just drinking and smoking for our sake, but you kind of wish he had.
For the music's sake, for sure, yeah, definitely.
He sold out for his health, bastard.
What's the next letter?
You. So I'm gonna dip out for a quick second, but that was Scott, and he said I've just closed the
box.
Udo. And which album was it? Are you guys looking on Facebook as well? Because he's pinged me on there, and I've lost it. It's
Animal House.
Yeah, that's the one. You guys start off with that one.
No idea. Never heard a single song from Udo.
You've got to make it last a bit longer because I'm going to be about a minute.
Snap. Yeah, snap.
Right. Should we talk about cause of death again? I've no idea. I have nothing against Udo. I just don't know. You know what? Udo's albums in this country are really expensive.
Let's talk about this. I don't know anything about Udo, so let's go for you. Let's go for this one, quick one, while Andy's not in the room. But this is, if you can see that's Unleashed, and their debut album, Where No Life Dwells.
Oh, supreme.
Swedish death metal. If again, you guys watching don't know, this was sort of the brainchild of Johnny Edlund, I think his name is, and he was originally in Nihilist, and Nihilist went on to be Entombed. And this, they sort of call this band Unleashed, one of the big four, Swedish big four, and there's no doubt about it, but their style was different. It wasn't all about that HM2 buzzsaw Sunlight Studio sound, and it was more if you autopsy, yeah, almost. If I can say it was death metal with choruses. You could really quite easily sing along. Before the creation of time, it was a lot more structured death metal, in my opinion. I was lucky enough to see these guys live back in the day, and they were brilliant. And Johnny Edlund was a beast of a man. He was like a proper Viking, tons of blonde hair and a leather waistcoat on, and just a beast of a fella. But all nice boys. But yeah, I'm sure Scott will be disappointed that we weren't talking about UDO, but we could have done with Darcy here because Darcy would know a bit about UDO. But I was late to the Accept party, so I'm even later to the UDO party.
I think that's the best out of the likes of Dismember and Entombed, Unleashed. I think the Unleashed album's the strongest debut out of them. I didn't even bother with them after the first album, but I think that's got some Autopsy in there and enough Swedish in there. To me, that's the most interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, and they're still going now. These guys have got a hell of a discography, haven't they? They must be on the maybe 12th, 13th, 14th album. I'm not sure. I mean, I have got quite a few of their albums, but I've not kept up with them like I should. But they never let you down. It's if anyone's thinking of getting into death metal or listening to it, this is always a good starting point because it's got the structure, it's got the rhythm. They're not a million mile an hour. And yeah, a fabulous album, fabulous debut album. And they class themselves as Viking metal, I think now.
Where's that Welsh bastard gone?
I don't know. Maybe he's number one. He's number one turned into a number two. I don't know. Who knows?
Oh God! Perish the thought. Unleashed. STUV. It's me. It's V.
Oh, is it? Yeah, you on now?
It's me. V. Violence. Eternal Nightmare. But how much do we hate this new remaster with this shitty pretend worn out cover? No, thank you. Just give me the original one, please.
Are you got the reason for that, why they've done that?
Thank you.
You're right. Do you want a full screen, you Mike?
No, you're all right. I'll suck you.
Sleep for you at the moment.
Right. Okay. There we go. Boom. Violence. Eternal Nightmare. 1988. I don't know what this reissue is about. This piece of shit here that's like pretend wear and tear. But Scott Waters come across. I mean, that's got to be the ultimate like find ever that I've ever heard about. Scott Waters made a video once, and he said he came across a whole box of unopened original Eternal Nightmares. That's got to be the holy grail ever. That shit sells for like 50 quid each now, but I've got this Poxy remaster. It's got the live benefit gig on it as well for Chuck Billy, which fair enough, that's a good thing. But Eternal Nightmare is in my top 10 debut thrash albums. It's the best Violence album for a start. I can understand why some people wouldn't like his vocals. Sean Killian's vocals aren't for everyone. He can sound out of tune. But the way he delivers his lines sometimes and the lyrics he uses, I don't think anyone else could do it justice, you know, especially on stuff like Calm Collector of the Sun's Distorted Features as I picked him off the road. Yeah, he's got a certain cadence within his vocal style that other people don't have. And he lacks all sorts of stuff, but he's still phenomenal vocalist for me. Please get me off that big screen.
Yeah, still center of attention though.
Mike said it all there, summed it up perfectly. I think if he suffered with anything violence back in the day, it was the Sean Killian vocal delivery. But at the same time, that is what makes that album so good. The music's great. It's got all the riffs in there. Rob Flynn guitaring, obviously now Machine Head. But yeah, it's chock full of riffs. It's got everything a thrash album needs. but it's got a little bit more because of that Sean Killian vocal performance. I just love that album. That is, for me, without a shadow of a doubt, a top 10 thrash album of all time. And I think if you can persevere with the vocal delivery, and Mark said it perfectly, it's the way it's delivered. It's now the way he delivers it. A bit like the Martin Walk here with Sabbat. His vocal delivery just sets him apart. Anyone wanting to listen to any old school thrash who's not heard that needs to get that. And to be honest, nowadays people are more perceptive or more open to different vocal styles than we probably were back in the late 80s when that was released. It's a phenomenal album. It really is. It's an album that I go back to a couple of times a year, I reckon, and listen to that, which is saying something when you've got a collection this fucking big.
That's right.
You know, great album.
Yeah, I was really late to the party on this one, but I got my car. And the vinyl itself was superb, but this cover is really kind of fragile. But it's one of these ones where they put the lyrics on the back, and the choice of color and size it's impossible to read. But I agree. I mean, I'm a real vocals make or break an album for me, but I have no problems with them on this at all. Maybe late to the party with it, but absolutely fantastic to have this in the collection, and one I do listen to a lot. I listen to it actually more online. This is one I'm quite happy to stick on YouTube. I listen to when I'm at work to when I've got some boring tasks to do, get rid of a good sort of like 40 minutes or so. Less than that probably, but great stuff.
The only downfall is it's too short.
How long is it actually? It's probably only about 30 minutes then, isn't it?
Yeah, it probably is a bit too short. Yeah, you're quite right. But that's it. That's all that's wrong with it, and that new shitty cover.
It's a killer cover, though, isn't it?
It is a brilliant cover. Yeah.
Oh,
Ed Repka, I believe, isn't it?
It reminds me of the Massacre from Beyond cover as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next letter.
W.
We might get through the whole alphabet on this one.
I think we're doing all right. The fact
we are
2 hours and 40 minutes. How many people are still watching?
We've got 18 on now.
Nice. Well, do you know what? Thanks very much, guys, because that's a really good turnout. That, you know,
that's way more than I expected, to be honest. Because people are watching afterwards, and hats off. I mean, hats off, sort of reluctantly because of the haircut, but you know.
I suppose it's 17 really, because one of those is Scott.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
anyway, this is my more obscure one. I think that kind of likely because I'm sure most ones I've shown before Andy might have been like, don't know about that one, but this is Wasted Youth, and this is a band from LA. These were around in the late 80s, and they were more. Their earlier albums were more like Black Flag, the Circle Jerks, that kind of, you know, that whole hardcore punk sort of thing going on. This album, what year was 88? Yeah, 88. They decided they were going to make a thrash album, and they do a decent job of it. It's I don't think many people know about it. It was released on it's a weird cover as well, because which way round is it? It's like that. That's the actual cover. So it's all it's to do with it's on the GWR. Scott, bless you, mate. It's on the GWR label, which I was always more familiar with it being like Motorhead and that kind of thing. But this album, I'm sure you guys have not heard of Wasted Youth, but Dave Kushner, the guitarist who did Velvet Revolver, this was his band, and also Joey Castillo, the drummer for Danzig and later on Queens of the Stone Age. He's on this album. They're the two sort of main guys in this band, but it's an unheard of thrash album. It's really good. It's got that crossover feeling going, not quite as much as your DRIs, but it's definitely got a crossover feel because they had come from that hardcore base. But if you've not heard it and you're a thrash metal fan, it's definitely worth checking out. The vocalist has actually got a bit of a Danzig style vocal to him, not as clean as Glenn Danzig, but it's it's very good. It's one album that I don't ever see anyone talking about, and it's a cracking thrash metal album from the late 80s. Wasted Youth, self-titled, and if you can see the cover there as well, I don't know if you can. And when you can see what the guy on the cover looks a bit like Dave Mustaine.
It's a bit pixelated, but we're getting it. If you hold it there for about 20 minutes, I think we may just get it coming through.
I'll just find out the people who are viewing, and I'll email it to them. But yeah, Wasted Youth is the cracker. Like I say, it's this was it. It was. They went from hardcore sound on the first, I think, 1 or 2 albums to this, and that was it. They were done, finished. And like I say, Dave Kushner went to Velvet Revolver, and Joey Castillo went to Danzig and Queens of the Stone Age.
I know absolutely nothing about that, so I'll hand over to our Welsh host, Mr. Michael Parkinson.
Well then, there's lovely. So I have not heard of that band, but there are a lot of bands that I mean, I've shown this many times. The old Contract in Blood, big UK thrash metal. There's a lot of UK punk and hardcore bands that jumped on the thrash bandwagons. That's definitely one I am interested in picking up on, Mark, and actually hearing some of that stuff, because there's a lot of from the UK bands. I don't know, as far as Wasted Youth went, whether they ended up alienating a load of fans because they changed from hardcore or punk to thrash. But I know a lot of the UK bands did at that time.
Yeah, I think they probably did. I mean, it was 88, so I think they were quite obviously jumping on the bandwagon if thrash was coming through. And you know, at best, it's a B. It's in that B group of thrash bands. You know, it's they were never going to challenge any of the big boys. But you know, for me, it's always worth. I'm always interested. Same as you, Andy. You know, you see about these bands and you want to check them out. It's definitely worth a listen. There's no doubt about it. It's not going to set the world on fire, and you know, it's just one of those albums that I've always been aware of, and no one ever seems to talk about. I thought, perfect. I'll show that. You know.
Cool. So moving on to X. That's mine. So obviously there was one clear, obvious UK thrash band that I could have shown, but as I mentioned to you, Mark, it would. I know you're just going to steal the thunder if I show it. So a different band, and that's. And obviously it's all about me, but I have gone for these guys.
And pick your screen up. If you're going to do this, you've got to do it.
Yeah, I need to direct it myself, and who better man than you? So this is a bit of a cheat, because this band's called 12 Bore, but their name is in Roman numerals, so it becomes as X11 Bore. Now this is a I'm going to come off this. This is a band that's kind of stoner doom, hard rock and roll. It's a little bit all over the place. It's one of these albums that says it's got 12 tracks, but 2 or 3 of them are just kind of intros for other songs. But if any of you guys have heard of these, I would be incredibly surprised. This is a private label. This is one of the bands that I found when I got into my stoner kick, and I was trawling through Bandcamp trying to find UK bands. It's actually my lovely lads. Look at them. CDs in the CD player still, but yeah. So I have obviously over the last few years I've got quite heavily into like the stoner doom genre as it is. They're a pretty good band. They're not gonna set the world afire, but I don't know how much you guys even have dipped your toes into the whole stoner way. Probably a little bit more sort of doom death for you, Mark, is it? Than doom itself?
I have sort of got, I don't know if they call it desert rock, but I've certainly explored like Koyus, or is that how you pronounce it? Koyus with Josh Homme. I can't think of any sort of band off the top of my head, but I do quite enjoy whenever I watch whenever I hear stoner, I always quite enjoy it, you know. I know I've seen videos that you've done, Andy, you spoke about Wolf Mother, and that's kind of got that sort of stoner vibe going, which I agree with completely. I know a lot of people wouldn't say that, but I do always enjoy the riffs. I've never heard of that band, never heard of them. 12 Bore.
12 Bore.
But yeah, stoner. It's not a genre that I'm averse to. I do quite like it. You know, I've never delved into it like you have at all. You know, but I'm still open to it because I find the riffs quite interesting. You know, I think the vocals sort of put me off a little bit sometimes because they can be a little bit sort of lost in the mix of music. But yeah, 12 Bore one for me to check out, that's for sure, mate.
Yeah, I was kind of struggling with X, as I say. So there are some better examples from this genre that I can certainly show in future.
I've never heard of them. And the sooner we get onto Z, the better.
Yeah,
I've got nothing to add to that conversation.
Let's move on quickly. As Derek points here, it's got to be Zentrix, and honestly, I have Zentrix, but I kind of avoid it. But
you've got to avoid Zentrix because this guy here on the right, he's well connected, and we didn't want to give him any extra sort of screen time than he was due.
Yeah, it's when we do this again, if people are interested in watching us three, or hopefully 4 next time talking, and X comes round to me, we'll probably need about 45 minutes just for that one, so I can tell you my stories, if you've not already heard them before, which I'm pretty sure you must have.
They're always worth hearing again, Mark. I just didn't want to steal your thunder by or hear them again just yet, maybe.
Yeah, you're a good man.
Are we on Z yet?
No. It's Y next, and Scott's told me what he was picking for Y. So there
has he come through with his? He's gone for
almost a litre of Morgan Spice, so I do apologise.
He's gone for Yngwie Malmsteen and Odyssey.
Yeah, I've got that somewhere to show it, but there we go. Here we go. Let me.
I'll tell you a funny story about this. I mean, it's a great album. I enjoy Malmsteen stuff. I've never been a huge fan of guitar wankery, as I would call it, but I do enjoy his stuff. I find he always picks a strong band to play with him. He always has decent vocalists. He writes some good tunes. But the story I want to tell you is my sister, back in the day, she was dating a guy. I'm going back to when, what year did this album come out? 88. 88. So, yeah.
I don't want to be outdone by anyone.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, let's all show that.
There you go.
There we go. Good. It's a good call, that, Scott. But yeah, I was. It was a couple of years. I hadn't heard this album, and my sister was dating this fella, Andy, and he knew I was into music. He was obviously a bit of a rocker, and he said, obviously now looking back, it was to impress my sister. So I've been over to LA. I play guitar. I've been over to LA and I've done some recording. And I said, "All right, okay, well, I play in a band. I'd like to hear what you do." And he gave me a tape, and I put it on, and I was like, "Shit, they're really good. He's really, really good." And it was only, and I was blown away. I was like, "Jesus Christ, this guy, he's going somewhere." I said to my sister, stay in there. He's going places, that one, I'm telling you." And it was only about a year later I found out it was his fucking album. He'd take this album and passed it off on me, saying this was his band. And so I was like, wow. And I never saw him. By that point, my sister and him had split up, and I never saw him again. But yeah, you can imagine someone tells you that this is what they've just been to LA to record. It's quality. It's a quality album. It's good hard rock, great vocals, great guitar. I like it. It's a good album.
Well, when I was starting out on my drinking as a teenager and going to my local rock night, Rise and Force, the song, was a staple. As was the likes of Fast as a Shark. A lot of bands was discovered by my local rock night, but Rise and Force was a big song played in my rock night. That's what got me into this album. And I'm not big in the guitar wankery, and I don't know any other of his albums either. I just know that my cousin bought this. This was the album with the song that used to get played at the rock night, and I bought it. And now and again, a couple of times a year, I put it on and enjoy it. I would never sell it or anything like that. I do enjoy it, but I must admit, I don't know the guy's career at all well. But I've heard he's a bit of an arsehole as well.
I know Rob who just had to comment there, some of his best. I think Rob's a big Yngwie Malmsteen fan, isn't he? I think he's pretty much got all of his discography. So he's probably the man to speak to there.
Yeah, I've got his first 3 or 4 albums, and I enjoy it. I have to admit. Now this album with Jolyn Turner on vocals, I saw them on this tour, and a girl I went to school with, she was going out with one of the guys from Acid Rain. Now in my head, bear in mind it's 30 plus years, I always thought it was the bass player, and I always thought it was Kev, but Kev wasn't the bass player, was he? He was the guitarist. So somewhere along the line, the brain cells have kind of gone a bit. But so we were sitting. This was in Cardiff. This was St David's Hall in Cardiff, and literally within a minute of them coming on stage, the Acid Rain guys, they just left. It's just like, fuck this, this is rubbish. But what really struck in my memory for that day was Jolyn Turner came out. So Malmsteen was out. He was all guitar wankery, as say. But Jolyn Turner was in. I think it was a full blue, like leather outfit, but it kind of looked purple. But I think it was the lights that were on him. But he came out and he was literally his hair, and he was flinging it all back, and he slipped as soon as he came on stage. He didn't completely fall down, but he did enough that everybody pointed and laughed. And he did not look impressed at all. He carried on as though nothing had happened, but you could tell he was really pissed at that moment. But
yeah, that's not a good entrance to the stage for anyone, that is it?
Sebastian Bach done that in when I seen them at Donington in '92. He run out to open up with Slave to the Grind, and he slid and went arse over tit, and then had to get up and start slinging Slave to the Grind. But yeah, well, to be honest, I wasn't asked about Skid Row by '92, like, but you know, it was all about Slayer for me then.
Yeah.
right, we are on to Z. We have made it to the end. Now, before you show something, there's been a prediction here. Let me just
Fuck off.
let me just see before I could let me just there we go.
Fuck you, Brendan. Get back to bed.
Who else can it be?
Still early. You've had a cup of tea, a few slices of toast. Why don't you fuck off back to bed?
Good call, Brendan. On Doom.
Well, come on. How many choices have you got for this shit?
It's a fantastic album. Come on.
It is a fantastic album. And I only ever knew back in the day Prime Mover and Backstreet Education. Back when I was a kid, I'm not sure anybody even bought this album back in the day when it came out, but I knew those two songs really well. And the Prime Mover album had for some reason I kind of got the same feeling I did of, you know, the Bad News and, you know, that whole scene, the BBC Bad News, Jennifer Saunders type of thing. I got that vibe from the Prime Mover video, and then at some point I got the full album, and it's a great album. He was the guy who sings for these was a reviewer for Metal Hammer or NME or something like that, and he used to get bands coming in to the office, and he would interview them. And it was looking for deeper meanings in the songs when he was interviewing bands. And he was thinking, you know, I'm going to try and tap into the minds of them and things like that. And he said he decided that there wasn't any deeper meanings in most of the stuff he was being told to interview. And he thought to himself, do you know what? I think I could probably gather a few mates together and knock up this sort of shit. And that's what he decided to do, just to kind of prove the guys in the office that he worked in that he could do it, and that's what he done. And I think that's a killer album. It reminds me of Gear Bikers on Acid, which is my favorite album of all time, but it's not as good. But it's in that vein, and it's a fantastic album. And anyone that hasn't got Tattooed Beat Messiah, get it.
Get it. Yeah. Oh, I will go on everything you've just said there, Mike. And as Darcy says, Skull Spark Joker. I mean, don't play poker with a Skull Spark Joker. Don't play poker. That's a warning to us all. But Backseat Education, Tattoo Beat Messiah, Let's Break the Law, Spasm Gang, Holy Gasoline, Planet Girl. It's one of the most underrated albums of all time. I think it is just superb. I love it, love it, love it.
I'm not familiar with it. I've heard of them. Prime Mover. I remember when Prime Mover came out, and I loved that song. Used to have it on 7-inch single. I just loved that middle section where he was just spitting the words out over and over and over. It was like this relentless, like a cacophony of just words. It was just brilliant. I've never heard the album. I've never heard another song by them. But Prime Mover, yeah. If any of the other songs on there are like that, I'd still be up for listening to.
The whole album, it's great.
Yeah, it's on my one listen now. I'll keep my eye out for that for sure. But like I say, Prime Mover. What year did that come out? Was it 88, 89, something like that?
I think it was 87. You know.
Was it? Yeah. So it was that perfect age.
88.
That's why I remember it. So 88.
88.
Yeah. It was perfect. I was on my little journey, and that came out, and it was kind of they were one of those bands that they would get on top of the pops, but they were still heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't on my wall.
Well, I'll tell you what, lads, we've done quite well there, because when we were talking about the length of the video, we said maybe an hour and a half of live stream, and we managed to double that. And we've still got people watching.
If people, I mean, we don't know. Me and Mark don't know how many people are still watching, but if anyone's still watching after 3 hours, that's fucking tremendous. And you know, that to me, if only one person still watching after 3 hours, I consider that a success. That anyone wants to listen to. Well, not so much me, but these fucking assholes.
we got well, we had 60s a lot, but so we dropped after you call them fucking assholes. Oh, that was so yeah, we have reached the end of our first alphabet, and what we thought we'd do is, if this was if people like this, enjoy it, we may do it again, but we're going to swap the letters around and have different people choosing bands from those same letters. So same shit, just different script.
And hopefully Scott can sort his fucking Wi-Fi out.
Yeah,
that'd be good. But anyway, Scott, it was good to see you briefly, and I hope we did you proud with your picks. I'm sure we didn't explain them as well as you would have, but there you go. But yeah, there's some nice comments coming in there. Thanks, Frankie. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Cheers, Frankie.
And everyone, Darcy, the Rock Scout, there he is.
Lots of people to mention. So we've got people still commenting are Tom H, Rob, Blackstar Vinyl, Darcy, Frankie, Brendan.
I'll tell you what, I want to give a special thank you to Rob at Blackstar Vinyl, because I'm not joking. This coronavirus, and I know we all joke about it, but it's fucking scary, and it's kind of shitting me up a bit, to be honest. Because there's so many people you hear with no underlying conditions. No fucking 3 words put the shit up me any more than that does now. And Rob is single-handedly pulling me through this shit. And, you know, fucking superb for that, Rob. Cheers, bro.
Yeah, that's one, Rob. It's a bit of black humour. It always helps out in situations like this. There's no doubt about it.
Black Star humour as well.
Yeah, Black Star humour, perfectly put. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, it's been good fun. I've enjoyed it, boys. I hope the people who've been watching have enjoyed it, and maybe they'll let us make another one. Eh?
Yeah. Well, let's we'll close this out now, guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you to Mike and Mark and Scott for his somewhat small contribution, but still value nonetheless. Let's do this again, lads.
Yeah.
See you all.
Take care.
Bye now.